Chapter 420. Countless black lights shot out, instantly enveloping the chosen that was still in midair. He screamed as his body was pierced through by over 100 needles. Those were steel needles that had shot out of Guarant's arm. These needles were covered in runes that made them frighteningly hard, and the physical body was simply unable to block them. They had pierced holes through his body from head to toe. He fell to the ground, his body basically just a lump of flesh now. Those people that had been shouting to kill all turned green with horror. Seeing this metallic monster in front of them, they all trembled. He had killed a chosen with just a single attack. Furthermore, his attacks were things they had never seen before in their lives. The fear of the unknown was what was truly terrifying. Run! Without any hesitation, everyone began to flee down the mountain. Right now, they no longer cared about what Yin Wushuang had promised them. Although treasures were enticing, you had to have a life to enjoy them. There were some here that had come here due to promises from Yin Wushuang, but the majority were actually those who had come here to suck up to her. Having heard of this matter, they wanted to create a good relationship with Yin Wushuang, and so they had taken the risk to disturb Long Chen. Originally, they had thought it would just be making some trouble. After all, they were all righteous disciples, and Long Chen shouldn't have dared to do anything to them. But Long Chen's ruthlessness had surpassed their imaginations. Guaran was now some metallic devil. With a wave of his hand, he killed a chosen. None of them cared about any treasures or creating a good relationship anymore, and they fled for their lives. "Ah, this is no good, don't you think?" Guarant's icy voice rang out. Placing both hands on waist, many little holes opened up over his chest armor. A huge ice wall was shattered by 3 weapons, revealing an ice-cold face. Shapely eyebrows framed her phoenix eyes, and a bright light shined in her eyes. She seemed just like an ice goddess that was beyond ordinary mortals. This kind of particular temperament was something only Yi Zhiqiu possessed. At this time, she was being besieged by 3 chosen and forced to constantly retreat. By her side were 3 men that were also fighting intensely. Blood had dyed their robes red, and they were doing their best to defend against a tide of enemies. Behind the 3 men were 2 bodies. One of those bodies was already cold and had lost any life. The other one still held a trace of life, but that kind of weak life force could be extinguished at any moment. "Yi Zhiqiu, don't struggle meaninglessly. Today, you'll all definitely die," sneered one of the 3 chosen attacking her. This chosen's face was covered with pockmarks. Although Yi Zhiqiu was forced into a disadvantage by the 3 of them, they didn't dare be careless. Yi Zhiqiu's ice attribute energy was terrifyingly destructive. At the beginning of this battle, this pockmarked man had fought a one-on-one against Yi Zhiqiu, almost ending up being killed by her. Although he hadn't died, he had suffered heavy injuries, causing his combat ability to sharply drop. Otherwise, Yi Zhiqiu wouldn't have been able to endure for so long. The 3 of them were all wearing monastery robes, coming from the 7th, 9th, and 11th monasteries. The other attackers were all from the various monasteries. "So what if we die? Long Chen will definitely get revenge for us. At that time, your deaths will be 1,000 times worse than ours." Song Mingyuan clenched his teeth. At this time, Song Mingyuan, Luo Tsong, and Yu Zifeng were fighting with their lives on the line. Each of their attacks were self-destructive ones that traded injury for injury. They had already descended into madness. As for these attackers, they all saw that victory was in sight. This was just their final struggle, and their deaths were merely a matter of time. No one wanted to take the risk of going head-on against them, so they were just fighting a battle of attrition to grind down their energy. Of the 2 bodies lying on the ground, the one that was on his last breaths was Li Qi, Song Mingyuan's inseparable brother. There was a sword that was stabbed into his chest, and he was on his deathbed. The other person, the one that had already lost his life, was Guan Wennen. Back during the first competition of the 108th monastery, alongside Gu Yang, Tang Wan'er, and Yi Zhiqiu, he had been one of the 4 core disciples that had already awakened their ancestral marks. There was a large hole over his stomach. His blood had dyed the ground scarlet, and his eyes were lifelessly staring up at the sky. Long Chen? Idiot, Long Chen will quickly be sent to the other world with you. Han Tianyu will personally cut off his head, sneered a chosen. Boom! The three chosen once more worked together to shatter Yi Zhiqiu's ice blade. She flew back, a strand of blood slowly flowing out of the corner of her mouth. Ha! All of you can die now. After that attack, they noticed that Yi Zhiqiu's aura sharply declined. That meant that all of her energy had already been poured into that attack. She no longer had the power to fight any longer. The three of them raised their weapons in delight, the cold blades slashing mercilessly at her. 10,000 wood overgrowth. The ground suddenly split apart, and countless wooden stakes bored their way out, forming a huge wooden shield around Yi Zhiqiu and the others. The three of the chosen's weapons all landed on the wooden shield. They were shocked to find that their attacks could only chop through a portion of this wood and were unable to completely destroy it. These three were all bone-forging chosen, and they had already tempered 2 bones. With their incredible power, they were unable to even break apart some wood. Boom! The wooden shield sank back into the ground, revealing 1 man and 1 woman. Long Chen. Seeing that face filled with killing intent, the three of them turned pale, stuttering out this name. Long Chen and Chu Yao had managed to finally make it. Seeing Long Chen, Yi Zhiqiu and the others finally relaxed, collapsing on the ground. Today all of you will die. Looking at these enemies that had been besieging them, Long Chen's killing intent soared crazily. Run! It was unknown who shouted it first, but over 100 experts turned on their tails and fled for their lives. They all knew Long Chen had killed Han Tianfeng. If someone as strong as Han Tianfeng had been unable to block Long Chen, then none of them had the slightest hope. Heavenly Wood Cage. Chu Yao pressed a palm against the ground, and countless wooden stakes once more grew out, forming a huge prison 3 miles wide, capturing each and every one of them. Die! Long Chen roared furiously and charged at the three chosen. His fist ripped open the void as it smashed at the three of them. They had already reached the edge of the cage and had just been about to attack it when Long Chen's fist arrived. Its terrifying power caused them to tremble in fear, and they hastily blocked. His fist slammed through the three of their weapons. They felt as if a mountain had slammed into their chests, and they all vomited a mouthful of blood. But before they were knocked back, Long Chen had already appeared behind them like a phantom. The sounds of bones cracking continuously rang out, causing people's scalps to turn numb. Those cracking sounds were mixed with their heart-rending cries. In just a breath's time, any bone that could be broken on their bodies was broken by Long Chen. Furthermore, Long Chen was extremely familiar with the human body's structure. He knew just which kind of bone breaks were the most painful. By this point, the three of them were no longer even able to scream. They just lay there suffering. As for the other people that were fleeing, they had reached the edge of the wooden prison, but the wooden stakes had interwoven tightly. Let alone a human, even a housefly would be unable to fly out. They attacked the wooden stakes with all their power. But the current Chu Yao was no longer the old Chu Yao. After absorbing the tree heart, her grasp over the profundities of wood had advanced to a whole new level. The wooden stakes she could summon forth were now much, much stronger than before. Their full power attacks were unable to destroy her wooden stakes, filling all of them with absolute horror. Die! Long Chen's voice like the roar of a death god, and a golden light shot out like a bolt of lightning. Blood splashed as heads flew through the air. People were horrified to see that not one person was able to block that golden light. Some people managed to raise weapons against it, but that light slashed right through all of them. No dash. The golden light took life after life, wreaking havoc amongst them. None of them had the ability to resist, and they could only watch as it continuously harvested people's lives. Long Chen, I beg you, please spare us dash. That person's reply was a golden light. Once his head left his neck, he no longer had to be terrified. But his expression was still full of unwillingness. Long Chen, I didn't personally attack any of your friends. I just came over because there were so many people. Spare me dash. By the time he finished speaking, his head had flown off, and he could no longer say anything else. At this time, Long Chen wasn't caring the slightest bit about people's screams. He simply controlled the golden page to continuously slaughter. As if it would be possible for Long Chen to believe their lies. The reason they hadn't personally attacked was because there were too many people and they hadn't had a chance to attack. Although they hadn't personally attacked, they had still surrounded Yi Zhiqiu and the others, preventing them from running. They deserved to die. The Golden Page's rampage was continuously reaping lives. In just a short time, the majority of people had died. Heads rolled across the ground, and blood was spurting everywhere. The dead were dead, but those who were still alive were still struggling despite their despair. They continuously ran around, vainly attempting to dodge the Golden Page. But all that was futile. In front of the Golden Page, they were just a bunch of weeds waiting to be killed. Their mournful screams revealed their hearts' wickedness. When they slaughtered others, they had never been merciful. Only when they were the ones being slaughtered did they understand just how mournful being killed was. The final head fell to the ground, and the world returned to calm. Even Yi Zhiqiu and the others were stupefied by the sight. This wooden cage had been like hell. As for Long Chen, standing there with a golden page in his hand, he would be that hell's merciless death god. Long Chen, hurry and come over. He probably won't make it. Chu Yao's urgent voice rang out. Chapter 421. He probably won't make it. Chu Yao's urgent voice rang out. Long Chen hastily rushed over. He saw that Chu Yao's wooden stakes were tightly wrapped around Li Qi, and a vast life energy was pouring into him. Yi Zhiqiu and the others were waiting around him. Song Mingyuan had already begun to sob. The two of them had always been as close as real brothers, and seeing Li Qi like this made him feel like a blade was slicing his heart. At this point, Li Qi's body was like an open drain, unable to hold any of the spiritual qi Chu Yao poured into him. At this time, he still had the slightest bit of consciousness left because of Chu Yao's energy. But he already had no life energy left. Just relying on an outer energy, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. I'm glad I got to see you. Li Qi's face was white as paper. Looking at Long Chen, he forced out the slightest smile. Long Chen, Chu Yao was unable to pull Li Qi back from the hands of death. They had been a step too late. Don't feel sad. I'm just happy. I get to see boss again, and that you're all alright. A content expression appeared on Li Qi's face. Li Qi, you can't abandon your brothers, cried Song Mingyuan. It's fine. None of you have to feel bad. He won't die. Long Chen took a deep breath and a drop of verdant liquid appeared in his hand. This was the divine life liquid that the spirit world expert had given to him before leaving. This liquid was extremely miraculous. No matter how serious the injuries were, it had always been able to heal them. It had never failed up to now. However, after all this time, this was his last drop. Even after he had been so heavily injured by the lightning tribulation, Long Chen had not been willing to use it. Li Qi was now already half a step into the gates of the netherworld. Only this drop of divine liquid could possibly save his life. Sending the drop into Li Qi's mouth, Li Qi immediately fainted, causing everyone to jump. His life energy is recovering, exclaimed Chu Yao. She was the first to sense that the spark of Li Qi's life had been reignited. The life energy she poured into him no longer just dissipated. Long Chen nodded. Looking at Guan Wenan's corpse, he couldn't help sighing. They really had come too late. Guan Wenan was already dead. Brother Guan died to save me. I definitely have to avenge this enmity. Yu Zifeng, who very rarely spoke viciously now. The four of them were now healed thanks to Chu Yao. Their auras were no longer so low, however it would take some time to recover their physical strength. First, I want to confirm something. Long Chen slapped one of the chosen. This slap temporarily blocked that person's pain nerves. Long Chen, spare me. I'm begging you please, I can't bear it anymore. That chosen begged with a terrified expression. He had never experienced this kind of pain in his life before. This level of pain was practically enough to make a person die. It had already surpassed the limit of what a human could bear. According to reason, once the pain surpassed a certain threshold, in order to avoid that pain, a person's body would automatically shut down and fall unconscious. That was a method of self-preserval. But it was unknown just what method Long Chen had used to make them clearly feel such an immense pain without letting them faint. Fainting had become an extravagant hope that was impossible to achieve. They finally understood what it meant to be in so much pain as to not want to live. "Speak. Who incited you to do this?" questioned Long Chen. "If I tell you, will you let me go?" That person's eyes brightened with a bit of hope. Long Chen once more slapped him and icily said, "You don't have the qualifications to argue." After that slap, his whole body began to twitch, and his eyes almost popped out. He was once more experiencing the pain again. With another slap across his face, Long Chen icily said, "You only have one chance. I don't like listening to nonsense." That person was filled with terror. Looking at his two companions whose bodies were constantly twitching beside him, he began to narrate what had happened in full detail. These three people were the lackeys of the first monastery. The first monastery was an enormous power even within the entire super monastery. There were dozens of monasteries that followed them. Frankly speaking, those monasteries were all subsidiary members of the first monastery. Furthermore, those monasteries were all ranked within the top 50 monasteries. Those ranked below 50 were mostly just ignored by the first monastery. However, there were always those who liked to kiss ass. Previously, Long Chen had killed Han Tianfeng and severed Yin Wushuang's arm. That had completely terrified Yin Wushuang, and she had tried to go find Han Tianyu, but she didn't know where he had secluded himself. After escaping, Yin Wushuang was still uneasy. She had fought twice with Long Chen now. The first time, she was still able to fight against him. But the second time, despite having advanced to the bone-forging realm and pushing her power to its limit, the difference between them had only grown even greater. Now, whenever she closed her eyes, she would see Long Chen's ice-cold, merciless face as he slashed his blood-colored saber to cut her in half. He had already become her nightmare. She was afraid of him continuing to grow stronger, so she had used Han Tianyu's name to gather people to secretly target Long Chen. Those people were not stupid. If Long Chen was able to kill Han Tianfeng, then just how many people in the righteous path would dare do anything to him? Those who had the strength to fight him wouldn't listen to Yin Wushuang. A favor from her was not worth much to those people. So Yin Wushuang had placed her sights on those subsidiary monasteries as well as some smaller sects. She offered them enough to move them, and had them go disturb Long Chen. She didn't require that they try and kill him. Instead, they just had to keep a constant eye on him and make some minor trouble for him. Of course, if they could kill the people by Long Chen's side, it would be much better. She offered ample rewards for that. In fact, for those who managed to make a good display, she offered to bring them into her Yin family. Her Yin family possessed an ancient bloodline, and the only reason she had come to the first monastery to cultivate was because of Han Tianyu. With the Yin family's power, there had been no reason for her to need to come to such a small place. So when people heard that promise, they had all been won over. Those experts that already had a good relationship with the first monastery put in even more work. Ever since Long Chen had reached Compass Mountain, they had been guarding there. Yin Wushuang had seen through Long Chen's intentions, and she had secretly encouraged people to spread out and kill the disciples from the 108th monastery. Her goal was to make Long Chen crazy and have him waste his time searching for the killers. Once Long Chen went crazy and began a massacre, it would attract everyone's attention. She trusted that there would be true experts who would sooner or later grow dissatisfied with that. If those experts then attacked Long Chen, her goal would be achieved. The Jiuli secret realm was open to 7 prefectures. The Xiantian super monastery was not the sole ruler of this place. The top geniuses of the other prefectures had also entered. Once Long Chen drew the attention of those other geniuses, it was very easy for a conflict to occur. She wanted to push Long Chen into the fiercest struggles. Where is Yin Wushuang? Hearing all this be explained by him, Long Chen's killing intent surged. This woman was too insidious, and she definitely couldn't be let off. But I don't know. After she made her announcement, she hid herself somewhere. She said if we had any accomplishments, we should immediately go seclude ourselves and not fight with you, said the chosen with terror. This Yin Wushuang really is vicious, raged Chu Yao. We'll definitely have to kill her to get revenge for our brothers. Yu Zifeng gritted his teeth. What? Are there other sacrifices? Asked Long Chen. Song Mingyuan, Luo Tsang, and Yu Zifeng all sunk into silence. Flames raged in their eyes. Yi Zhiqiu's expression grew sad. Clenching his teeth, Song Mingyuan spit out furiously, after hearing about your fight on Compass Mountain, we all gathered from every direction. We ran into quite a few attackers on the way. When we exchanged blows with them, we heard there were quite a few brothers who had been killed by them. They even beheaded them as proof for that slut Yin Wushuang. We also killed quite a few people on our way. We saw many images of our brothers being killed in their spatial rings. Luo Tsang's voice was also choked with emotion. They were all hot-blooded men. Seeing the images of their brothers being killed, no one would be able to accept such a result. Of our 108th monastery, the only ones still alive are us, Tang Wan, and perhaps Guoran and Gu Yang. The rest are all. Long Chen felt as if his heart was being crushed by a boulder. Although he had long since been prepared for such a result, as he knew the secret realm was filled with countless dangers, hearing that was still impossible for him to accept. Each one of those people had been his brothers. For Song Mingyuan to say this, it meant he really was sure those people had died. As for the exact details, Long Chen didn't care to ask. How could he possibly ask about how each one of those people had died? That was just torture. I'll leave these 3 to you. You can use your own way to kill them, said Long Chen. Good. Song Mingyuan, Li Qi, and Yu Zifeng all got up at the same time, each of them carrying one of the chosen to a secluded corner. Only 2 hours later did they stop. Their faces held both tears and a slight smile. Once the 3 of them returned, Chu Yao raised her hand and made a coffin out of her wooden stakes. They placed Guan Wenan's corpse gently inside. Once the coffin was sealed, their moods all became extremely heavy. Let's go. Our next goal is revenge. After finishing up with this battlefield, Long Chen looked up at the distant sky. The killing intent in his eyes had already turned solid. Chapter 422. By the time Long Chen and the others returned to Compass Mountain, the ground was already littered with corpses, and blood still slowly trickled. Guoran, Gu Yang, and Su Yang were busy cleaning up a battlefield. They were gathering the spatial rings as well as picking out the needles that were stuck in the corpses. Those were all Guoran's precious treasures that he had to gather back. He had been smart and had long since put his personal spiritual imprint on each of those needles. He could easily sense their locations within a range of 300 meters. Those things took a great deal of bitter work for him to create. Losing just one of them filled him with pain. Ever since the previous righteous and corrupt battle when he had run out of ammo, he always focused on keeping sufficient weapons around. So usually he wasn't even willing to lose a single needle. Currently, the needles that had just been littering the ground had already been gathered. The only ones left were still stuck in people's bodies. Under normal circumstances, with the power of the needle mechanism he used, those needles would easily pierce through a person's flesh. These needles that were stuck in bodies had usually already mostly pierced through a body, or even 2 bodies before getting stuck. Guoran, let's just leave them. It's too hard to get these things out, complained Gu Yang. Extracting these needles from corpses was truly unpleasant. It wasn't that he found touching corpses to be so taboo, but they were all sticky and unpleasant to extract. You and Su Yang can rest. I'll just slowly handle it by myself. These things are all like my children, and I can't just throw them away, said Guoran. To shoot out this many of yours kids in one time, you really are an interesting father. Gu Yang shook his head. The speaker said that unintentionally, but the listener heard that other meaning. Guoran was between laughter and tears, saying, Gu Yang, you really are getting vulgar. Gu Yang rubbed his head, not understanding. He was about to say something when a bird cry rang out, and a huge figure descended from the sky. Boss has returned. Sister Yi, Brother Mingyuan, Brother Luotsong, Brother Zifeng, long time no see. Seeing that they had returned, Guoran hastily called out a greeting. After seeing everyone together, the previous heavy atmosphere lightened a great deal. Hearing that Guan Wenan and the others had all died, Guoran and Gu Yang were all filled with sadness. So many of them had entered, but now only these few people were still alive. Mentioning Yin Wushuang, not one of them didn't grit their teeth in anger. That slut was too hateful, and they wished to tear her apart. Alright, that's enough. The path of cultivation is just like that. No one knows just who will fall at one time. The important thing is that we cherish these feelings while we're alive. From today onwards, our goal is revenge. Us brothers can't be afraid of death, and a blood debt must be repaid with blood, said Long Chen. Boss, we'll listen to you. But just who is our exact enemy? Asked Guoran. He couldn't completely comprehend just what Long Chen meant by revenge. Just what hatred had caused Yin Wushuang to target Long Chen like this. Long Chen's conduct had always been open and candid, and he had never offended her. So why would she constantly be forcing Long Chen to this point? The true people behind the scenes are the higher-ups of the first monastery. As for Yin Wushuang, she is just the person executing their scheme. But according to my guess, the first monastery was probably only planning on targeting me. The original plan was probably to kill me as soon as I entered the secret realm. As for Yin Wushuang, she was even more vicious, wanting me to become a stepping stone for Han Tianyu. She constantly smeared my name, turning me into a heinous villain. Then Han Tianyu, under the banner of justice, would kill me, bringing him another glorious achievement. Later, the situation gradually exceeded her control, and she realized that I was a serious problem. Since she couldn't find me, she started to search for all of you. She wanted to kill you to force me out. I was in seclusion back then, and so I didn't know what was going on outside. As soon as I exited seclusion, there was that fight on Compass Mountain. Long Chen gave a simple explanation of what had happened. According to his analysis, if it was just the higher-ups of the first monastery, they definitely wouldn't have made it so fancy. Keeping it simple and direct was more in line with a cultivator's temperament. If it had been someone else handling this matter, and they were only to target Long Chen wouldn't fear anything. But this matter had landed in Yin Wushuang's hands, and to target Long Chen, she had targeted the people by his side. That was something Long Chen could not tolerate. No matter what, Yin Wushuang must die, said Long Chen hatefully. Of course that slut has to die, or our brothers will not be able to rest in peace. Gu Yang's killing intent also surged. However, this slut is hiding somewhere right now, and doesn't dare face us head-on. We won't be able to find her. If we really did just try to randomly look around for her, we would fall for her trap, and probably even be ridiculed by her in secret. So right now, the most important thing for us is to increase our strength. Before Han Tianyu comes out of seclusion, we'll raise our strength to the highest level possible. Then when the time comes, we'll have a fierce battle, warned Long Chen. Don't worry, boss, during this battle, none of US brothers will get scared. We'll all kill as many as possible, said Guoran confidently. Long Chen nodded. Looking at this battlefield, he said, "Are these your masterpieces?" Correct. These were all done by Guoran. Brother Su and I didn't even have a chance to attack, praised Gu Yang. Gu Yang was still slowly recovering from his shock from that previous battle. The armored Guoran was just like a slaughter machine. With a raise of his hand, countless concealed weapons shot out from unexpected places, making it so people couldn't defend. Guoran had hunted them down to the last. Even the final chosen had been smashed to death with a single one of his metal fists. Furthermore, that chosen had definitely been very powerful. But no matter what he tried, he was unable to damage Guoran's armor. Not only was its defense incredibly high, Guoran had made it very exquisitely, and he was able to move very nimbly with it on. So all Guoran had to do was attack. He could basically ignore other people's attacks. That chosen's powerful attacks had been completely stifled by Guoran. Su Yang sighed. To tell the truth, I've experienced countless battles in my life, but this is the first time I've seen such a terrifying fight. Hee hee, that's because you haven't seen our boss fight. I guarantee that would make your blood boil, laughed Guoran. After being praised this much, he actually ended up knowing how to be modest and change the subject. That was definitely something rare for Guoran. It seemed that little fellow was finally beginning to change. Longchen said, "What were you doing just now? Was killing them not satisfying enough? You're playing with their corpses?" Cough. No, I'm just gathering back my treasures. I can't just so easily throw away the things I worked so hard to make. Boss, why are you looking at me like that? Asked Guoran. He noticed that Longchen's gaze had become very disdainful. Are you a pig? Why don't you just gather all those corpses together and burn them? Do you think your needles would burn too? Longchen was a bit speechless. Guoran clapped his leg. What a simple method. How could I not even have thought of that? He had been depressed this whole time about having to take out these needles from flesh. When these needles were stuck deep in a person's body, the only option was to hack apart the flesh around it. Let alone Gu Yang and Su Yang, even he found it a bit unbearable. After all, that was human flesh, not pig flesh. Su Yang was an outsider, and so he didn't feel right with complaining. He just lowered his head and worked. But Gu Yang hadn't been able to hold back a few grumbles. Longchen sighed. I find you really did use up all your smarts on forging. Just go gather the corpses and little Violet can help you incinerate them. The little Violet Longchen was referring to was Chu Yao's Violet Phoenix Sparrow. Currently, the Violet Phoenix Sparrows had all advanced to the 4th rank, and the flame they could spit out was something even Chosen were unable to endure. Burning a few corpses was just playing around. Guoran immediately began to gather the corpses that still had his needles in them. Everyone else began helping, but Su Yang was held back by Longchen. Su Yang, what do you want to do next? Do you want to stay with us? Longchen was truly grateful to Su Yang, as he was a person who understood that favors had to be repaid. Ignoring the risk to his own life, he had come here to report news to him. That was enough to prove he was a loyal and virtuous person. He wanted to pull Su Yang over, but for Su Yang to stay by his side was also too dangerous. Although he had the ability to offer many cultivation resources, compared to that danger, those resources were not so precious. So Longchen wanted to hear Su Yang's thoughts. As for Su Yang, being invited over by Longchen, his eyes reddened. Just who was Longchen? He was the greatest dark horse within the secret realm, was able to stand shoulder to shoulder with peak experts, and was unrivaled within his realm. The fact that Longchen was inviting him to become a member meant Longchen treated him as one of them. Just what kind of glory was that? But after a brief excitement, he sighed, "Thank you, Brother Long, for your respect. But I come from a humble origin, and I still haven't paid back my debt to my sect. I can't leave them, so please forgive me for declining." Longchen nodded, understanding Su Yang's meaning. He was someone that had come from a small sect, and considering how much kindness his sect had given him, he couldn't betray his sect by leaving to follow him. According to what he knew about Su Yang, it was very likely his sect had spent a huge amount of resources to get him a quota for the Julie secret realm. For his sect to send him in was a true gamble. So Longchen truly could understand his difficulties. That's fine. No matter what, we're all brothers. I don't have anything good to give you, but here are 20 bone-tempering pills and 10 wind spirit stones. As brothers, don't decline. Longchen pushed a jade bottle as well as 10 wind spirit stones to Su Yang. Brother Long, I can't accept this, Su Yang humped. He had only ever heard of bone-tempering pills. But what he had heard was that they were unimaginably expensive. Furthermore, these 10 wind spirit stones were at least 10 times better than the one he had obtained at the beginning. The wind energy inside it was incredibly pure. As brothers, don't say anything useless. Since I'm giving them to you, just take it. You risked your life to give me information, which saved my friends from calamity. If you don't take it, it means you're looking down on me. Longchen intentionally turned hostile. Alright, then I'll accept it. I, Su Yang, will never forget Brother Long's great favor. Su Yang respectfully bowed to Longchen before leaving. After Longchen sent off Su Yang, Li Qi, who had been unconscious this entire time, finally awoke, delighting everyone. Once that brief celebration was over, Long Chun continued refining pills, while everyone else alternated between guarding and tempering their bones, all in preparation for the upcoming clash. Gu Yang says that Guo Ran has guts to throw out so many of his children at once. But the word for guts also means seed. Chapter 423. News of the battle on Compass Mountain, as well as news of Long Chun killing monastery disciples in the canyon, resounded throughout the entire secret realm. Quite a few people ran over to confirm its veracity. Seeing the ghastly corpses, they were all horrified. At the same time, countless criticizers came from Long Chen, believing Long Chen to have a vicious heart and ruthless methods. Having slaughtered members of the same path, he was guilty of terrible crimes. However, such words could only be said behind his back. That was because after those two huge battles, no one dared run out and provoke Long Chen again. They could only express their own sense of righteousness behind his back. No matter how great the rewards offered were, no one once more went to find trouble for Long Chen. As for that hand behind the curtain that had been constantly urging people on, it had become powerless. One reason was because the matter of someone deliberately targeting Long Chen had already become common knowledge. As cultivators, just how many people were so stupid? The majority of people had already seen through what had happened. The other reason was that while some subordinates were busy trying to instigate people to target Long Chen, most people had already entered seclusion now. So just who would bother with them? Just how many of them truly cared about who was good and who was bad? Those subordinates were just wasting their time. In just a few months, the secret realm's exit would finally open. At that time, there would be a huge battle between the righteous and corrupt paths. Those with weak cultivation bases would all die within the secret realm. These people all considered the first monastery, as well as Long Chen, to be acting idiotically. Before that huge battle, they were actually busy with inner strife. If that wasn't idiotic, then what was? So most of the righteous paths experts were all just sneering at Yin Wushuang's attempt to spread her propaganda. As for the corrupt paths experts, they had long since vanished into seclusion. They were focused on that final battle. They didn't like inner strife. If the righteous path wanted to fight amongst themselves, then that was fine. They would focus on increasing their strength, and when the time came, they would slaughter the righteous disciples. In the end, wouldn't those treasures that the righteous disciples had risked their lives for end up in their pockets anyways? Yin Wushuang had a group of people spreading her propaganda, but everyone was already in seclusion. Just who were they spreading that propaganda to? It wasn't as if they could just shout as loudly as possible all day. If they ended up disturbing an expert's seclusion, they would probably be directly killed. After trying to instigate more people for 2 days without any results, Yin Wushuang could only helplessly give up. Her people all went into seclusion. So this was the calmest time of the Jiuli secret realm. Other than some brazen experts or some criminals fleeing deeper into the secret realm, essentially everyone had entered seclusion and begun tempering their bones. As for those disciples who had come from humble origins and didn't have bone-tempering pills to use, the only thing they could do was focus on increasing their cultivation base, wanting to use their realm to make up for their lack of tempered bones. Although that wasn't very effective, it was better than doing nothing. That final battle would have to do with everyone's life and death. No matter how many treasures they had gained in the secret realm, if they couldn't leave, it would still be useless. During this time, Long Chen was still focusing day and night on refining pills. At this time, the only person guarding them was Guo Ran. Every time someone would furtively attempt to spy on them, Guo Ran would get rid of them with a single arrow. Those who were still focused on them at this time had to be enemies. So Guo Ran was now like a hunter patiently waiting for rabbits to take the bait. But after killing several people, a week passed without him making any more harvests. He began to feel bored. Although looking at Long Chen refine pills was something very pleasing to the eye, no matter how amazing it was to watch, after seeing it dozens or even hundreds of times a day, a person would still get tired of it. Boss, how much more until you finish refining? Not much. Right now we already have 6,000 bone-tempering pills. After another 2 days, all the medicinal ingredients will be used up, answered Long Chen. After refining day and night, Long Chen had accumulated more and more medicinal pills. However, the medicinal ingredients only decreased. Some of those living medicinal ingredients had been kept within his life ring. He wasn't planning on using them to refine pills. After all, living medicinal ingredients were 100 times more valuable than dead ones. In the outside world, Long Chen could obtain a massive amount of wealth from them. Furthermore, these living herbs were ones that people would fight over to buy, which would make the price skyrocket. His life ring was packed with precious herbs, but Long Chen didn't care whether or not they were comfortable inside. In any case, it was fine as long as they didn't die. Even if their branches snapped or their leaves fell, even if they were on the verge of dying, it was still fine. In any case, those things were priceless treasures in the outside world. Even half-dead herbs would be treated importantly by sects. Those sects definitely had ways for them to flourish again. In the outside world, many precious medicinal ingredients had already gone extinct. But there were also some precious herbs that were all in the hands of certain sects and powers. They treated those precious herbs as things even more important than their wives, and sometimes they wouldn't even let others know they had them. Even if they were to sell them, they would only sell dried-up herbs. They would rarely ever let people know they had living versions they could breed themselves. It was only when something was so rare that no one could obtain it that its price would skyrocket. So there were actually quite a few extinct herbs that the larger powers possessed and kept secret from the rest of the world. The price of those herbs was all controlled by those sects. As they steadily drove those prices higher, the smaller powers could only spend an exorbitant amount of money to purchase them. As a result, the larger sects only grew stronger, while the smaller sects always remained weak. For example, Su Yang's sect was so poor that they were unable to even prepare bone-tempering pills for him. That wasn't because they didn't care for Su Yang enough. In fact, once Su Yang left the secret realm, they would go all out to groom him. Bone-tempering pills were just too rare, and his sect only had the wealth to raise a single expert. If they ended up giving their bone-tempering pills to Su Yang, and he died in the secret realm, then his sect would decline even further. Su Yang's shoulders were carrying the fate of his sect right now. He was their one chance to rise, and so he couldn't accept Long Chen's offer. This was also why the cultivation world, with its thousands and thousands of sects, still had most of its resources in the hands of just a few people. The smaller sects could only struggle while constantly on the verge of collapse. As for the larger sects' disciples, even ordinary disciples could easily fight above realms with the elders of smaller sects. That was the difference between them. Boss, if we completely absorb all these medicinal pills, how many bones can everyone temper? Asked Guoran. Splitting it equally, each person would get almost 800 bone-tempering pills, and according to the normal cultivation world's theory, you would all be able to temper 16 or more bones. The bone-tempering pills that Long Chen had refined were not the same as the ones in the outside world. The medicinal formula was several times better, and it was capable of fully activating the medicinal energy. Most importantly, the medicinal ingredients Long Chen were using were either alive or had only just died, which further increased the medicinal energy. Furthermore, due to the fact they were just alive, their medicinal energy was also easier to absorb. At the very least, Long Chen's bone-tempering pills were 10 times more effective than the bone-tempering pills on the outside world's market. He had seen many bone-tempering pills in other people's storage rings. These were made with an inferior formula that was unable to fully bring out the medicinal energy. However, according to his deduction, the difference between the two shouldn't have been so large. After an investigation, Long Chen had discovered a certain secret. That secret made Long Chen sneer inside. He had found that the outside world's bone-tempering pills had had something deliberately done to them to make their medicinal effect lower. At the beginning, he had thought that whoever had done this must have some mental disorder. What was the point of turning good medicinal pills into trash? But after thinking about it, he realized that the person who had done this was most likely the seller of these pills. By not changing the price of the pill, but reducing its effect by 50%, those who wanted to temper more bones would have to purchase an exorbitant amount of bone-tempering pills. This was definitely conning people. It was no wonder that the bone-tempering pill had conned so many geniuses to death. This was definitely done by some immoral merchant behind the scenes. Furthermore, he had found that this was true of both the righteous and corrupt path. All the bone-tempering pills had had their effect cut in half. However, it was impossible to notice this. You couldn't tell from either looking at it or even from consuming it. It was only possible for Long Chen with his pill god memories. He was able to tell something was wrong because according to the medicinal pill's formula, tier, and quality, the medicinal effect did not match. All the bone-tempering pills sold outside were the same. That was because a certain existence had monopolized the bone-tempering pill market. All sects could only get them from the pill tower. And thus, Long Chen had come up with a certain conclusion. Under the outer semblance of being a holy land, the pill tower was actually a bunch of shady wolves. But at the very least, they were fair about it. They conned both the righteous and corrupt path equally. Otherwise, if they only conned the righteous path but not the corrupt path, the righteous path would definitely be doomed. When he thought of that, Long Chen realized a certain something. With the righteous path and corrupt path constantly fighting, and the pill tower taking a neutral position, selling medicinal pills to everyone, then wouldn't the party benefiting the most be the pill tower? Neither the righteous nor corrupt path dared to offend them for fear of losing access to medicinal pills. That really was comical. 16 bones? Wouldn't that be the level of the sect leader? Heavens! Then wouldn't we be able to sweep through the entire secret realm? Guoran was filled with disbelief. Each extra bone you tempered would greatly increase the amount of energy that could be stored within the bones. That would make a person incredibly strong. Tempering 16 bones was practically something he had only heard of in legend. Don't get excited too early. I said that under the normal bone tempering process, you would be able to temper 16 bones. But since we've all chosen complete tempering, these pills can at most let us temper 4 bones, said Long Chen. Guoran stuttered. The difference between 4 bones and 16 bones was far too great. There's no way around it. To undergo complete tempering, each time you temper 1 bone, you also have to go through every single bone in your body. That's the only way to make sure every bone gets tempered. The previous bone connecting pills you consumed created energy channels within every one of your bones. Pretend the bone you're attempting to temper is a beggar, and you're trying to feed it some bread. But in order to feed that beggar, you first have to feed the 205 beggars that are in front of it. You need to make your rounds through each of them before getting to that last one. Do you understand? Smiled Long Chen. Chapter 424. No way? It's this exaggerated? Guoran was stunned. It's not the slightest bit exaggerated. Only in this way is it possible to temper each and every bone in the body. With each bone, you have to temper all the other bones as well, said Long Chen. Then wouldn't it require decades to undergo complete tempering? Guoran felt slightly hopeless. He had already eaten the bone-connecting pill, and thus connected all his bones. He had no choice but to undergo complete tempering at this stage. You're extrapolating according to normal standards. For other cultivators, for each bone you temper, it costs twice the amount of the previous time, and the time required to temper it also doubles accordingly. For them, to temper 8 bones requires over a year's time. First-rate bone tempering requires at least 3 years. But we're not the same. For us, each bone we temper requires the same amount of time. If it took 3 to 5 days to temper the first bone, it will take 3 to 5 days to temper each and every bone. In fact, once we reach the end, we'll temper them faster and faster. That's because we tempered each of our bones with each tempering, so by the end, each bone's requirements go down, and the bones you've already tempered don't need further energy, explained Long Chen. Oh, then I'm relieved. You really scared me just now. If we had to keep bone tempering for decades, then my springtime of youth would all have been lost, sighed Guoran. But after you finish tempering each bone, you'll need to undergo one final total tempering. That total tempering will be a bit painful. Seeing Guoran's expression suddenly change, Long Chen laughed. It's not like you think. Once each bone in your body is tempered, just what level do you think your strength will explode to? If I haven't misjudged, the amount of power your armor can release is directly proportional to your own physical strength. At that time, you understand. Hearing that, Guoran's eyes lit up. Long Chen was absolutely correct. His armor was something that amplified his own power. Although his armor looked ordinary, there were countless steel wires tightly bound around his muscles. Each one of his movements pulled on those threads, and adding on a few mechanisms that were activated by his fingers, it would multiply his original power. Boss, you really are awesome. Then we're on track to become the strongest squad ever. But if the amount of bone-tempering pills we have is only enough for 4 bones, then just what astronomical number will we need for complete tempering? Thinking of that, Guoran began to sweat. Good word. Astronomical really is accurate, nodded Long Chen. Don't praise me at this kind of time. How are we supposed to get more bone-tempering pills? Guoran was filled with worry. There will always be a way. Haven't you already noticed? As our cultivation bases gradually increase, the enemies we come into contact with also grow stronger. If we cultivate like ordinary people, our lives will definitely become incredibly miserable in the future. The path of cultivation is just that cruel. Once you've stepped onto it, don't even think of escaping. Trouble will constantly come to find us. So we have to think of any way we can to get stronger. Only then can we live with dignity, sighed Long Chen. I understand, boss. There is no path of retreat for us anymore, nodded Guoran. Speaking of which, do you think I should make Wild a set of armor? If I start now, then I should be able to finish it before the Secret Realm's exit opens. With Wild's strength, If he made a set of armor for Wild, then with Wild's abnormal strength, he would definitely become a practically godlike killer. Do you think Wild is like you, and understands how to use those controls and maneuvers? When are you going to start using your head? Oh, I forgot. Guoran clapped himself in the head with embarrassment. With Wild's intelligence, getting him to learn how to control his kind of armor would be heaven-defying. Back then, for Long Chen to teach him the simplest way of circulating his qi, Long Chen had almost died of anger. And Long Chen considered himself someone with decent patience. Speaking of which, have you seen Wild in the last 2 days? Asked Long Chen. Yesterday I went over there. Wild was still sleeping then, and the ground was littered with feathers. That violet, that bird is only half-eaten right now. It seems it'll take Wild some more time to completely finish it. Guoran suddenly remembered how Long Chen didn't want him mentioning the violet phoenix sparrow's name. Those 4 little fellows were currently guarding the perimeter, and after being subdued by humans, their intelligence had increased. That topic was taboo. The violet phoenix sparrow was a peak 5th rank magical beast, and its flesh contained a great deal of energy. For an ordinary person, they would need half a day to digest just a mouthful of its flesh. Even with Wild's abnormal body, he needed to sleep for a few days to digest that energy. It could be seen just how terrifying the amount of energy in that flesh was. Currently, Wild really is too frightening. Just the power of his blood and qi is enough to terrify me. And I'm his brother. If it was someone else, they wouldn't even dare get close to him, exclaimed Guoran. Some kind of special aura had now appeared from Wild's body, and that aura was even more terrifying than that of a high-ranking magical beast. Long Chen smiled. Wild was a warrior from the barbarian race that consumed all beasts as food. Now that he was consuming the flesh of 2 peak 5th rank magical beasts, that barbaric aura of his had become even clearer. He still clearly remembered the aura from the barbarian race expert in the Abyss of Fiends. When he compared that aura to Wild's, he found they really were similar. However, Wild's aura was far weaker than that expert's. But with the support of this powerful flesh, that barbaric aura of his continued to grow, meaning Wild's body was beginning to awaken. According to that expert, their barbarian race didn't need to cultivate any secret techniques. Once their flesh reached a certain level of power, they would automatically awaken their abilities. He had also mentioned something about the barbarian god's blessing. Long Chen still didn't know what that meant, but Yu Shaoqian had told him that this world truly did have gods. If there were gods present, then what were they doing? Why would they let the world become so chaotic? Boss, how about I make you a set of armor too? Your power would multiply, and you could definitely slaughter everyone, said Guoran. Long Chen shook his head. That's not my fighting style. If I wear armor, that's equivalent to not having enough confidence in my own physical body, and it will affect my Dao heart. I'm not the same as you. You are someone who wants to become a crafting god. Wearing your own armor will further stabilize your Dao heart. The two of us walk different paths. Once I finish refining the bone tempering pills, I'll start refining bone forging pills for everyone to increase your cultivation bases. At the very least, everyone has to be able to reach the mid-bone forging realm. The amount of medicinal ingredients he had were limited. At most, he could only allow everyone to temper 4 bones. But the good thing was that after tempering 4 bones, they had all set down a foundation for the rest of their bones. Although they hadn't completed the tempering process, even their non-tempered bones had become much stronger, passively increasing their strength. For close-range fights, this increase was very precious. But the cost for it had also been shocking. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, half a month had gone by. Long Chen had finished refining all the bone-tempering pills and was now focused on refining the bone-forging pills to increase everyone's cultivation bases. After continuously refining medicinal pills for a month, even Long Chen felt like he would puke. Just looking at his pill furnace was enough to make him dizzy. But the good thing was that he didn't need to refine that many bone-forging pills. Even though they were refined by Long Chen, each person could only consume 10 of them. That was already the absolute limit. In fact, for ordinary bone-forging pills, just consuming 3 of them was the limit. The bone-forging pills were different from bone-tempering pills. They were used to increase cultivation base, and needed to be combined with spiritual qi. They needed to be slowly absorbed, or it was possible for your realm to become unstable and your foundation to become flawed. Over this fortnight, everyone had consumed the bone-tempering pills like eating rice, and once all the bone-tempering pills had been consumed, everyone had finally tempered 4 bones. As for which 4 bones those were, they were naturally the small bone of the 2 arms and legs. That improved both speed and power, and it was always the first 4 bones people tempered. Millennia of experience had told everyone that those 4 bones were the best. After finishing the bone tempering, Long Chen had everyone rest for a few days to stabilize the medicinal energy in their bones before increasing their cultivation bases. Hearing that they had a slight vacation, Guoran immediately pulled over Gu Yang, Song Mingyuan, Li Qi, and Yu Zifeng, finding a secluded place to compare notes. Gu Yang and the others were also full of mettle. After their seclusion this time, they felt as if their bodies had completely transformed, and so they also wanted to have a good fight to test their new strength. In any case, with a metal monster like Guoran present, they could bring out their full strength. What could go wrong? The few of them left, leaving behind only Long Chen and the 5 women on Compass Mountain. They had only just left their seclusion, and each of them was full of energy. This chance to increase their strength had completely transformed them. Even the always taciturn and unsmiling Yujichio had a faint arc to her lips. Even she was unable to conceal her excitement. Now what should we do, Long Chen? Do we go find that woman for revenge? Asked Tangwana. Speaking of revenge, their expressions all turned icy cold. Yin Wushuang was too sinister, and not one of them didn't hate her to the bone. Long Chen shook his head. She can't run away. If we go looking for her like this, our chance of finding her are too low. It'll just waste everyone's time. For the next few days, we'll rest for a bit and adjust our mental states. Other than that, I also have gifts for you and Meng Qi. Gifts? The first one is for you, Wan. Long Chen smiled and took out a stone the size of a baby's fist. Chapter 425. Wind Spirit Stone. Tangwana let out a startled exclamation. With her innate wind spirit body, she could instantly sense the vast amount of wind energy in this stone. That was something that Tangwana would long for even in her dreams. To her, such a thing was a gift from the heavens, and there was nothing else more suitable for her. Thank you, Long Qin. Tang Wana received the Wind Spirit Stone excitedly, wanting to immediately go absorb the wind energy within it. Wind Spirit Stones contain the purest wind energy within heaven and earth. They contained profound wind mysteries, and if she could comprehend some of them, it would greatly increase her abilities. Although Tang Wanner's family wasn't poor, they weren't an ancient family. There were many things that had been lost over time, and she couldn't rely on her family for anything. Her future cultivation would all be up to herself. Otherwise, her family wouldn't have sent her to the Xiantian monastery to cultivate. That just proved her family was much inferior compared to the last place 108th monastery. You're this happy about just one? Laughed Long Qin. Could it be you have more? Tang Wanner was filled with shock. If it was just one, it'd be far too lacking to be a gift for you. If I'm going to gift you something like this, I'd have to give you at least a mountain of them. Long Qin laughed and handed a ring to Tang Wanner. All you like to do is brag. If you really had a... At first thinking he was joking, the instant she looked at what was inside the spatial ring, her eyes popped wide open with disbelief. With her understanding of Long Qin's abilities, she supposed it might be possible for him to gather a few dozen Wind Spirit Stones. But seeing the mountain of Wind Spirit Stones in the ring, she was absolutely stunned. What is it, Wanner? The others looked at her with surprise. Just what had she seen to make her so speechless? Take a look. Tang Wanner handed over the spatial ring to them. When they saw what was inside, they were just as shocked as Tang Wanner. How did you get this, Long Qin? Asked Chu Yao. Naturally, I got it through adventuring. Long Qin gave a simple recount of how he had ended up noticing Wind Spirit Stones being blown around within the misty mountain valleys. Wow, Long Qin, you even thought of such a clever method, praised Chu Yao. The other women nodded. Long Qin was bold and daring, but he also paid attention to the smallest details. The reason he had his current accomplishments was not by coincidence. But why does this mountain of Wind Spirit Stones have a portion cut out from the top? Logically, you would have only cut it at the bottom, wondered Tang Wanner. Long Qin, you're definitely hiding something. Hurry and own up. Meng Qi stared at Long Qin with a touch of suspicion. You're overthinking it. These Wind Spirit Stones are things I worked so bitterly for. Their origin is definitely completely pure. Being stared at by Meng Qi, Long Qin began to lose some confidence. I don't believe you. Just now, your spiritual fluctuations changed. You're definitely hiding something. Meng Qi smiled in an unforgiving manner. Yes, hurry and own up. Chu Yao and the others also followed Meng Qi, taking an attitude of if he didn't talk, he would be harshly punished. Tang Wan, do you even have a conscience? I gave you such treasures, and you stand with them as well? You really turn hostile faster than the flipping of a page. Even Tang Wanner had now betrayed him. Don't think you can scare me. Right now, I'm a member of us sisters, and we must work together. Tang Wanner waved her hand. Long Qin, hurry and tell us. None of us can cultivate right now, so just tell us your story. Chu Yao gently pulled on Long Qin's arm, sitting down with him. They all sat in a circle, the women all staring at Long Qin. He almost felt as if he was floating lightly through the air from being stared at by such beauties. I can tell you, but you can't laugh, or I won't tell you. Long Qin hesitated for a moment before giving a warning. Fine, we won't laugh. Hurry and tell us. Tang Wanner wrapped her arm around Long Qin's other arm, her face alight with anticipation. With the two of them on his arms, Long Qin really couldn't find a way to refuse them. He just thickened his face and told them about what had happened. With a soul specialist like Meng Qi around, Long Qin didn't even have a chance to lie. Hearing how Long Qin had repeatedly bamboozled Han Tianfeng, how Long Qin had repeatedly trampled him and led the barbaric wind beast to attack him, they all couldn't hold back their laughter. As for Tang Wanner, she was laughing especially hard, rocking back and forth. But a beauty was a beauty, and no matter how she laughed, it was still enchanting. Seeing them holding their sides from laughter, Long Qin became embarrassed and raged. Didn't you say you wouldn't laugh? Long Qin, You can't blame us. It's just too funny. Tang Wana was unable to even stay sitting straight up from her laughter. As for the ice goddess Yi Zhiqiu, she had turned around. But from the trembling of her shoulders, she was obviously laughing as well. Long Chen was speechless. Now he regretted telling them this. He had gravely damaged his glorious image. Long Chen, you really are bad. Even Chu Yao was laughing so hard that she didn't even have time to breathe. Although he had only given a simple recounting of what had happened, when they pictured a grand, peak genius being toyed with almost to death, all the while not knowing just who it was that was messing with him, they really were unable to hold back their laughter. Ah, Long Chen, really well done. Such a bastard should be killed just like that. Tang Wana finally finished laughing and patted Long Chen on the shoulder. There's nothing embarrassing about this, Long Chen. To handle an enemy, you naturally should use any and all methods, or the one to suffer will be you. Lu Feng'er greatly approved of what he had done. Speaking of which, I remember that fellow Jiang Yifan. Did you end up running into him? Asked Tang Wana suddenly. She didn't know whether or not Long Chen had finished taking revenge. Nope. I searched for him forever, but I didn't even see his shadow. Long Chen shook his head repeatedly. Even if he was beaten to death, he definitely couldn't admit what had happened. Even Long Chen shivered when he thought of Jiang Yifan and Crap Brother Chi's fates. That was really too nauseating. Meng Qi glanced at him oddly, but seeing Long Chen doing his best to give her a meaningful glance, his eyes seeming to be begging her, she just smiled and didn't say anything. Long Chen, why are you looking at Sister Meng Qi like that? Asked Chu Yao. This is a kind of tender-hearted gaze. Could you not tell? Laughed Long Chen. This phrasing of his was too ambiguous and flirtatious, causing all of them to blush. Meng Qi didn't even dare look at the others now. Seeing that one sentence was enough to stop their attacks on him, Long Chen sighed inside, cursing himself for being stupid. If he had known that it would be this simple, what would he have had to beg for? 1. Keep the wind spirit stones yourself. I know you can't use them all, but just look after them. Right now, all you need to do is absorb the most pure energy of the wind spirit stones to quickly increase your wind comprehension. That will bring huge benefits to your cultivation. Since no one else was saying anything, Long Chen brought the conversation back to proper matters. But that would waste a huge amount of their energy, said Tang Wana. Wind spirit stones contained an enormous amount of energy, but that energy wasn't all entirely pure. Only a portion could be absorbed. Most cultivators would absorb all the energy of the wind spirit stone into their bodies, and then they would force out the impurities. Only then could they keep the waste to the minimum, as wind spirit stones were just too precious. But Long Chen wanted her to just absorb the pure energy, and just directly waste the impure portion. That meant she would reject over 90% of its energy. That was truly extravagant, and practically a waste of a natural treasure. If it's a waste, then it's a waste. Right now, time is more important. When the exit opens, it will definitely bring a bloody battle. Each little bit of strength is a greater chance of survival, said Long Chen. All right, I understand. Tang Wana nodded. This was currently an extremely pressing period of time. Seeing her nod, Long Chen knew he didn't need to worry about that anymore. Tang Wana was a very sensible girl, and he didn't need to worry about things she had promised him. Meng Qi, this is your gift. Long Chen took out a golden page. Both Chu Yao and Yi Zhiqiu let out startled exclamations. They had been present when Long Chen had rescued Yi Zhiqiu and the others. He had used just this golden page to kill all those attackers. It was incredibly sharp, and all weapons and armor had been as weak as paper in front of it. That scene of its golden light bringing with it a rain of blood was still fresh in their memories. Long Chen, this is? Meng Qi was startled by Chu Yao and Yi Zhiqiu's reactions. This is a soul item, said Long Chen. Soul item? Meng Qi let out a startled cry. As a soul cultivator, she naturally knew what that was. Even in the Wind Spirit Pavilion, they were extremely rare and precious. Long Chen dash. Meng Qi was just about to refuse when Long Chen solemnly said, now isn't the time to be courteous. Of everyone present, you're the one most suited to this soul item. Using a soul item requires you to use your spiritual strength, but Chu Yao, Yijichio, Wana, and myself are all fighters. We can't fight while splitting our attention to use it. Only you and Lu Fanger can use it to its full potential, while you are the one who has the strongest soul energy here. With you controlling it, during a critical moment, you can instantly kill experts. This is our entire team's life-saving talisman. But in truth, this is not a true soul item, so its use is limited. You'll need to constantly use your soul to nourish it and form a connection to it. Even I don't know how exactly this thing should be used, so it'll be up to you to figure that out, smiled Long Chen. After distributing these two treasures, everyone once more began to talk and laugh. Although Yijichio didn't smile or talk, a trace of warmth had appeared in her eyes. This relaxed time flew by. 3 days later, just as everyone gathered together to enter seclusion again, an unfamiliar guest arrived. Chapter 426. What a rare guest. Who would have thought that Sister Hua Biluo would come to see me here? There were 2 people in a tent. In front of Long Chen was a slender woman in a purple dress. This woman was precisely the second monastery's #1 expert, Hua Biluo. Long Chen was surprised to see her now. Meng Qi and the others had intentionally vacated the tent, leaving just the 2 of them. Hua Biluo smiled. To rudely turn up unsolicited, please forgive me, Brother Long. Please sit. Long Chen waved his hand. There was a table and 2 seats in the tent that Guoran had prepared. Sister Biluo, I'm quite the boorish man, so please don't blame me for not knowing etiquette. Hua Biluo gently brushed forward her dress and sat down. Her movements were very graceful and relaxed. There was a certain kind of air around Hua Biluo that made her seem very poised and graceful, one that would instinctively make a person feel relaxed. But Long Chen disliked it. That was a kind of noble mannerism. It could be considered an accomplishment in the secular world. But in the cultivation world, this kind of artificial mannerism could be described with a single word: posturing. Long Chen knew that Hua Biluo wasn't doing this deliberately. This was something innate to her, and if his guess wasn't wrong, her origins were definitely not simple. Senior apprentice Brother Long Chen is courteous. Men should be open and candid, living free and unfettered. To tell the truth, I greatly admire you. Hua Biluo smiled gracefully, a smile that could deeply move a person. It could be said that Hua Biluo was exceptionally beautiful. There were few men who wouldn't like her. That pride in her bones would especially cause a man to feel a strong longing. It was just like a horse. The more prideful a horse was, the greater the desire you would feel to subdue it. Sister Biluo overpraises me. Since you like to be direct, then I also won't bother with etiquette. Why have you come to find me? Asked Long Chen. Hua Biluo was slightly surprised by how direct Long Chen was. He had skipped over all those polite manners, getting to the main point without even pouring a cup of tea for her. However, she quickly reacted and smiled. Yes, the reason I came here was to form an alliance with you. Hua Biluo was very intelligent, and after this short of an exchange, she could already tell Long Chen's character. Knowing he didn't like beating around the bush, she also got right to the point. What kind of alliance? You want to handle Han Tianyu together? Yes. I'm sure you're aware that the first monastery has been targeting you since you entered the secret realm. They set up layers of traps, constantly raising your infamy. That Yin Wushuang is especially repulsive, even placing her target on the ones beside you when she couldn't handle you. That kind of person is the scum of the righteous path. Unfortunately, this junior sister is not strong enough on her own to handle the first monastery, and could only watch as Brother Long had to suffer injustice. Seeing her apologetic expression, Long Chen smiled slightly. Sister Biluo, neither of us are stupid. Since you want to collaborate, shouldn't you bring out some sincerity? Yes, the first monastery was targeting me. I trust that your second monastery definitely knows the whole story. But the reason you just watched instead of doing anything was to see just how many trump cards I have, and whether or not I would be worth pulling to your side. Only once I revealed enough power to move you did you begin to take sides and protest against my injustice. Having her thoughts seen through by Long Chen, Hua Biluo's expression changed slightly. His words were really too direct, and she found herself put on the spot. Sister Biluo, I don't have any other intentions by saying these things. I just want to tell you that if we want to form an alliance, we both need to be sincere. We can't conceal things from each other, or when we face our enemies together, we'll be suspicious of each other. If we're just scheming against each other, there's no point to it, said Long Chen. I really do have to blush with shame about that matter. Hua Biluo's face did redden slightly. Long Chen had been entirely correct. Even before the secret realm opened, it was impossible for the first monastery's covert actions to slip past the attention of the second monastery. Which monastery didn't have a few spies? If the first monastery could bribe other sects' elders and disciples, then the second monastery could do the same. So they had learned everything that had happened. Furthermore, for something as big as Luo Bing bringing her 36th monastery's disciples to grandly punish the 108th monastery, only to be defeated miserably, it was impossible to slip past the second monastery's ears. So Hua Biluo was 100% clear on the matter between Long Chen and the first monastery. That was always why she had purposely smiled at Long Chen at the beginning when all the monasteries had gathered. One reason was to leave behind an impression as a foundation for this alliance. But the other reason was to provoke Han Tianyu. She never paid any attention to Han Tianyu, acting as if she didn't even see him. So when she expressed such a smile to Long Chen, she succeeded in arousing Han Tianyu's discontent. Furthermore, at that time, Long Chen had also been accompanied by two peerless beauties like Tang Wan'er and Yi Zhiqiu. Others might not have been able to tell, but Hua Biluo had immediately sensed Han Tianyu's jealousy. After entering the secret realm, Hua Biluo hadn't directly gone to ally with Long Chen. Instead, she had chosen to be a bystander, wanting to see if Long Chen was really worth her pulling him in. If Long Chen had been unable to reach that level, she would have spent her time pulling in others. And so that line of hers, that she could only have watched as he had to suffer injustice, was just a lie to deceive others and to deceive herself. Once images of Long Chen's defeat of Yin Wushuang had reached her, she had finally taken action, saying Long Chen was the innocent one, and that the woman in the photographic jade had just been setting him up. However, back then she had only just said that single line. That was also setting up a foundation. Saying such a thing had been of no help to Long Chen at all. At the same time, she hadn't directly drawn on the hostility of the first monastery. However, after he had managed to defeat Huo Wufang, she had finally been moved, feeling like it was time to take action. As a result, she had directly supported Long Chen, pointing out that he was being entrapped by someone. Although she didn't directly say who the person entrapping him was, she implied it was the first monastery and that Yin Wushuang was the director. Then, when Long Chen had killed Han Tianfeng and severed one of Yin Wushuang's arms, Hua Biluo should have immediately come to find him. However, she had only come now after Long Chen and Guoran had slaughtered a mass of their enemies, only once everything had calmed down. That was a bit unexpected for Long Chen. I've actually been waiting for you for a long time. You've come a bit late, smiled Long Chen. Talking with you really saves effort. I was going to come earlier, but because of a few things, I ended up being delayed. Hua Biluo smiled bitterly. Long Chen had already impressively seen through everything. She sighed. Suddenly, I'm a bit afraid of cooperating with you. Oh, but... Because I find you really are impressive. To have already managed to clearly see through everything, I really don't feel that safe. Hua Biluo sighed, brushing back a few strands of loose hair. Long Chen laughed. Then are you curious why I just foolishly jumped in despite knowing about this trap? Why I didn't think of a way to counterattack? Or perhaps do you think I have some hidden scheme? Hua Biluo didn't say anything, but she nodded slightly. She felt that with Long Chen's intelligence, he should have long since smelled the scent of a trap. According to reason, he should have long since come up with preventative measures and not have acted so passively. However, all things had their own thoughts and plans. If Long Chen really had a plan, then he had truly hidden it deeply, so deeply that it was frightening. In truth, you're overthinking it. I knew there was a scheme against me, but I didn't spend that much energy on thinking about how to use brains to resolve it. In my eyes, she is absolutely nothing. If I ended up slowing down my advancement because of her, then my ending would definitely be very miserable. So despite knowing, I didn't have time to play those games with her. I have many things to do that are more important. In this world, there are many problems that can be solved with intelligence. But I trust that Sister Biluo is aware that when there is a problem that intelligence cannot solve, only martial strength can solve it, said Long Chen. When intelligence cannot solve a problem, only martial strength can, Hua Biluo muttered Long Chen's last phrase, a faint light shining in her eyes. As expected, senior apprentice brother Long Chen really is an intelligent person. This phrase of yours has let me see a new level of things. Sister Biluo is too courteous. All things have pros and cons. If you can use intelligence to solve a problem, it would definitely save effort and be safer, right? Hua Biluo laughed, as Long Chen really was too interesting, and his words were always very sincere. From his gaze, she could that he was a very prideful person. And yet he didn't display it. In comparison, those people who always acted very haughty were the people that felt self-inferior, and they had to use that haughtiness to hide it, all to find their own meaning for existence. As for truly prideful people, they never purposefully acted arrogant. Long Chen was such a person, and such a person would usually disdain lying, whether it was to friends or to enemies. It really is enjoyable talking to you. I almost have an urge to have long discussions into the night with you, laughed Hua Biluo. Let's not. I'd rather talk about that matter of cooperation. After all, I still want to live for a few more years, and you should know that these days, even the walls have ears. With a slight carelessness, someone might end up punished with the 5-horse dismemberment punishment. Long Chen acted very afraid. Within the other tent, Meng Qi, Chu Yao, Tang Wana, Lu Feng, and Yi Zhiqiu all had their eyes closed, cultivating. Although they seemed to have entered a meditative state, their ears were all perked up and listening. Hearing Long Chen's words, they all reddened. Was that 5-horse dismemberment punishment referring to them? All right, then let's talk about cooperating. I have one question for you. Can you let off Yin Wushuang? Absolutely not. Long Chen's expression changed. Chapter 427. Absolutely not. I don't know whether the matter of her targeting me was decided by herself or because she was ordered to, but she has already crossed my bottom line. The enmity between us can only be washed away with blood. Either I die or she dies. There's no third option. Long Chen's words were decisive without any room for leeway. There was no way to doubt his determination. Long Chen was now completely infuriated with Yin Wushuang. Hua Biluo was silent for a moment before slowly saying, Long Chen, do you know how powerful the ancient families are? Long Chen shook his head. I don't know. I also don't need to know. Even if she is the descendant of a god, she still must die. Otherwise, I won't be able to face my dead brothers. Whenever Yin Wushuang's name was mentioned, Long Chen's killing intent would soar. Guan Wenan's lifeless eyes were forever fixed within his mind. Although the various disciples of the 108th monastery had once had some enmities with each other during the initial competitions, those enmities had all been completely forgotten since the righteous and corrupt battle. They had all become life and death brothers who trusted each other unequivocally. Thinking of how those people hadn't died due to the struggle with the corrupt path, but instead due to the insidious schemes of that woman, Long Chen really had an urge to cut Yin Wushuang into 1,000,000 pieces. If you kill her, her family will not let you off. Perhaps even the super monastery will not be able to protect you. The super monastery's higher-ups will not offend an ancient family just for a disciple. At that time, you will be handed over as a murderer to appease the Yin family's fury, said Hua Biluo. Haha, the ancient families really are mighty. So only they can kill others, but others can't retaliate? Sneered Long Chen. You are correct. The ancient families are that barbaric, but there's also no way around that, as they have the power to do so. She was only sent to the monastery as a tempering experience. Once that experience is over, the Yin family will call her back. With the ancient family's haughtiness, they will definitely not permit one of their descendants to be murdered. So Brother Long, you have to think this over. For her, you are willing to throw away your own life. Is it worth it? Hua Biluo looked at Long Chen complicatedly, trying to persuade him. I don't care if it's worth or not. This is an issue of principles. If I can't get revenge for my brothers, then what is the point of me cultivating? What is the point of living? No matter how high a person's cultivation base reaches, it is a constant struggle while death is just a step away. I would rather live happily, repaying gratitude and enmity, living each day as it comes. As for my enemies, then while I'm alive, they will all be sent to hell, said Long Chen. But have you ever thought that you might implicate the people by your side? Once an ancient family is infuriated, your friends will also die. What will you do then? Seeing how obstinate Long Chen was being, Hua Biluo was slightly angered. I would run. Contrary to Hua Biluo's expectations, Long Chen actually said these 3 words. I would run and cultivate on my own. When I'm strong enough, I will exterminate their entire family, using their blood as a sacrifice to my dead friends. Then I would bury my bones with my companions. Long Chen's voice was extremely calm. But within that calmness was an absolute confidence, one that would cause a person's soul to shiver. It was an absolute joke to say you would exterminate an ancient family. But when this joke was said by Long Chen, it seemed so natural, so domineering, and contained an unquestionable resolve. In the other tent, Meng Qi and the others' hearts were pounding. When they heard Long Chen's last sentence, they seemed to be able to see the scene of Long Chen all alone, standing in front of a field of graves, filled with sadness as he killed himself. Tears streamed down 5 faces. Even Hua Biluo felt a burst of sorrow. According to Long Chen's character, perhaps that really would be the final result. Is there really no room for any leeway? Asked Hua Biluo. Thank you for your advice, but the enmity between me and Yin Wushuang is unresolvable. The people by my side are not my chess pieces, but my life and death brothers. Long Chen's words caused Hua Biluo to be a bit angry. But that anger had only just surfaced when it was replaced by a dim sadness. To be your friend really is fortunate, she sighed. In the sinister cultivation world, people like Long Chen were truly few and far between. As the proverb went, when the dead were dead, the living had a duty to continue living. She had really never heard of someone who would throw away their own life to get revenge for dead people. In the cultivation world, the focus was on benefits and profit. No matter how great the value of a person was while they were alive, once they were dead, there was no longer any value to speak of. Long Chen's thinking profoundly shook Hua Biluo's inner heart. This was the first time she encountered someone in this world who cared so purely about his friends. I, the other hand, don't think they're so fortunate. Those that want to be my friends have to have quite the hardy lives, or staying by my side will be too dangerous. A sad light shone in Long Chen's eyes. Long Chen was actually someone very guarded with his emotions. He wasn't afraid of danger, but he was afraid of the people by his side facing danger. He wasn't afraid of death, but he was afraid of seeing each of his friends falling one by one. That was something harder to endure than his own death. That was also why he had strived to be a great scoundrel when he first joined the monastery. He wanted to be frivolous. He wanted to be on his own, with no cares in the world. He wanted to do whatever he wanted to do. That was a nice thought. But then brother after brother appeared by his side. He was already firmly tied to everyone. He was no longer facing life on his own. He was no longer alone on his cultivation path. This new path was one with laughter and joy. But when that joy was lost, it would become pain and suffering. Long Chen cherished each person by his side, so he needed to get stronger, and he needed everyone else to get stronger as well. Why don't you wait then? Since you are confident in growing to that point, why must you face her at this time? Asked Hua Biluo. This isn't a matter of waiting. I know what kind of person she is. If I don't kill Yin Wushuang, she still won't let me off. Furthermore, even if I did let Yin Wushuang off, a second Yin Wushuang will immediately pop up. Then a third and a fourth. Right now, I want to cut down this Yin Wushuang so that the future ones learn to be afraid. I'll smother those future problems before they get a chance to grow. So I absolutely must kill Yin Wushuang, said Long Chen. Hua Biluo rubbed her forehead, feeling a headache. It looks like I have no way to persuade you to give up on killing Yin Wushuang. That's correct. So you don't need to waste any more time on that. If I haven't guessed wrong, then you must also be a person from an ancient family. Yes, I am the same as Yin Wushuang and come from another ancient family. Furthermore, the relationship between our two families is rather average. Long Chen was speechless for a moment. Rather average? Truly worthy of someone from a noble family, her words were so implicit. Why not just directly say that their family's relationship was bad? The reason I was sent to the monastery was also for a tempering experience. However, it can also be said to be a competition between me and Yin Wushuang. The Yin family approves of Han Tianyu's talent, and so they intentionally sent her over to the first monastery. Their plan is to set him up as the monastery's top expert and have him take first place in the monastery competition. Once he has that glory, the Yin family will invite him to marry into their family, as currently he still lacks that qualification. He must obtain the first place of the monasteries. With the relationship between our two families, I naturally won't let them do as they please. So I want to suppress Han Tianyu in the secret realm. Long Chen asked, what exactly do you mean by suppress? Suppress in all ways. Not just in terms of direct martial might, but also in terms of group power. I've already promised the second monastery's sect leader that I will help him fight for the rank of the first monastery. Currently, I've roped in quite a few smaller powers, forming an alliance with them. At the very least, I'm not losing out in numbers. In terms of actual combat ability, I might not be able to defeat Han Tianyu, but I can at least guarantee that I won't lose. But with Brother Long's assistance, we should have over an 80% chance of victory. But you say you have to kill Yin Wushuang, so my plans are ruined. Even if my Hua family's relationship with the Yin family isn't good, there technically isn't any hatred on the surface. But if you kill Yin Wushuang, then it will no longer be a matter of hidden competition. This matter would blow out of my control, sighed Hua Biluo. Even though she came from an ancient family, she wouldn't be able to escape her punishment if she helped Long Chen kill Yin Wushuang. Although the Yin family wouldn't be able to do anything to her Hua family, killing Yin Wushuang would go beyond her family's plans. Her actions would lead to dissatisfaction amongst her family, and she would end up losing out greatly. Her goal in being sent to the monastery was to try and suppress the Yin family, but the Hua family definitely did not want the matter blowing up too big. If Yin Wushuang died, the nature of this matter would have completely changed. So Hua Biluo was stuck in a difficult position. What should she do in this situation? Should she still war against Yin Wushuang, or should she just quietly retreat? But if she retreated at this point, all her previous efforts would have been wasted. Her tempering experience this time would count as a failure, and that would also cause dissatisfaction amongst her family. Long Chen was also lost in thought. He understood Hua Biluo's difficulties, but it was absolutely impossible for him to let off Yin Wushuang. After pondering for a long moment, Hua Biluo sighed. I've decided to quit my old plan. Chapter 428. Long Chen wasn't surprised by Hua Biluo's decision. Her decision was the smart one. If she really did cooperate with Long Chen at this time, even if she didn't personally do anything to Yin Wushuang, she still would be labeled an accomplice. However, I've only decided to change my plan of suppressing Yin Wushuang. My plan to deal a blow to the first monastery hasn't changed. This is something I promised to my sect leader, said Hua Biluo. Oh, then what do you want to do? Although I can't help you target Yin Wushuang, I can bring my group to stand by your side. Don't look down on my group. I've pulled in quite a few smaller powers. With that many people standing by your side, you'll definitely be very intimidating. If the first monastery wants to splash more dirty water on, they'll just be insulting themselves. To tell the truth, Yin Wushuang has already exhausted all her abilities, and so she has no choice but to use her despicable methods. Just by standing by your side, it'll be like a slap in Yin Wushuang's face. It'll be equivalent to telling everyone just how contemptible the first monastery's schemes are. This way, when you target Yin Wushuang, the first monastery's alliance will hesitate. Seeing how strong your side is, they might not even attack. At the very least, it will have a deterrent effect, said Hua Biluo. I don't need you to directly participate in the battle. But if my friends fall into danger during the battle, I hope you can lend a hand to help. If you do, I, Long Chen, will owe you a favor. Hua Biluo's eyes brightened. Long Chen was someone who kept his promises, and to have a favor from him. With his potential, if he didn't die, he would definitely grow to a terrifying realm. A favor from him was truly important. All right, I promise. Hua Biluo extended a hand. Long Chen also extended a hand, lightly patting Hua Biluo's hand. This was a custom that was one of the most solemn promises in the cultivation world. Thank you. Long Chen finally relaxed slightly. Brother Long is too courteous. I'm not really helping you much by doing this. But your care for your people's safety really is rare, praised Hua Biluo. Of everyone she had talked with, Long Chen was the only one who she hadn't had to constantly guess their inner heart's intentions. She didn't have to worry about him scheming against her, which was something that made her feel secure. Then, since you've already decided to change your original plan, do you have anything else that you need my help with me? Asked Long Chen. No. Although my plan has changed, just giving a blow to the first monastery is a win for me. This time, the first monastery's greatest mistake was allowing that narrow-minded woman to execute their plan. Now I'll expose the first monastery's despicable side to everyone, causing their prestige to drop to the ground. Also, I'm planning on challenging Han Tianyu before the secret realm closes, said Hua Biluo. You want to break the myth of Han Tianyu being undefeatable? Long Chen was surprised by Hua Biluo's heroism. Do you think defeating him is so easy? Hua Biluo bitterly smiled. You still don't know how terrifying Han Tianyu is. Other than you, he is the most talented genius I've seen so far. When it comes to talent, you might be better than Han Tianyu, but your cultivation base is too low. If you had reached bone forging, you could have swept through the secret realm. I also finally realize why you would be ranked second on the corrupt paths must-kill list. Even in the face of top experts, you are able to fight across realms. That kind of talent is too worrying, so I'm sure that whether it is Yin Wushuang, Han Tianyu, or the corrupt path, none of them want to let you leave alive. So Brother Long, don't blame me for having been long-winded. You must think this over carefully. As long as you are able to leave the secret realm, you'll have unlimited prospects. Even if you were to join my Hua family would bring out their full power to groom you. Hua Biluo truly didn't want to see Long Chen, a generation's greatest genius, die here. As long as he didn't kill Yin Wushuang, there would be some leeway. Even she, Hua Biluo, would be able to ask her Hua family to help protect him. But if he killed Yin Wushuang, the Hua family would not possibly protect him, just a talented genius that had yet to mature against the Yin family's wrath. The relationship between ancient families was complicated, and even Hua Biluo was unable to see through the higher-ups' thoughts. Thank you for the reminder. It's not that I don't appreciate your kindness, but that my martial Dao is to live freely, repaying both gratitude and enmity. If I let Yin Wushuang get away with her crimes, I wouldn't be able to endure that kind of impact. That would plant a heart devil, and it'd be impossible for me to advance any more. Most importantly, as cultivators, we risk our lives cultivating every day. Just why is it that we have to constantly get stronger? Isn't it because we want to forcibly change our own fates? To use your own power to protect the ones you want to protect? If you just endure everything and you get into the habit of tolerating whatever happens to you, then would you even be a cultivator? If you just want to use schemes to solve your problems, what is the point of you getting stronger? Hearing Long Chen's words, Hua Biluo shook slightly. His words contained the essence of cultivation, causing her to see a clear path in front of her. There were many cultivators, but if you were to ask why they cultivated, then of 10,000 people, you would get 10,000 different answers. However, Long Chen's words were like a loud alarm bell. If you only relied on scheming, then were you even a true cultivator? She finally understood why Long Chen, who was clearly smart enough, never used schemes to handle others. He had to go all out to get stronger, because he firmly believed that in front of absolute strength, all schemes were worthless. A person's energy was limited, and if you used schemes to settle everything, then that would take up a great deal of your cultivation time, delaying your cultivation. Long Chen's decision was the smart one. But just who had such confidence in their own strength? Could it be that Long Chen's confidence had never wavered? His words had allowed Hua Biluo to see an unprecedented path for herself. Although she wouldn't necessarily choose to walk down that path, just seeing it was enough to bring her great benefits. Thank you for your pointers, Brother Long. Hua Biluo cupped her hands gratefully. At the same time, she wondered to herself, if instead of spending time and effort on schemes, if she had spent that time on cultivating, then just how powerful would she be right now? Would she still need to worry so much about her current situation? It was still that same phrase, in front of absolute strength, all schemes were worthless. If she was strong enough, would she even need to play these schemes? She could just directly defeat Han Tianyu and Yin Wushuang. Sister Biluo is too courteous. Since we've chosen to cooperate, we are comrades, so being too courteous will make us seem like outsiders, laughed Long Chen. In truth, Long Chen said this in order to stop Hua Biluo from trying to persuade him. In that aspect, women were not as straightforward as men. Talking with Brother Long Chen has been quite beneficial. Since we've already set up our cooperation, I won't bother you any longer. Hua Biluo stood up, and Long Chen sent her out, watching her figure disappear into the distance. Meng Qi and the others now came out of their tent. Long Chen, is Hua Biluo trustworthy? It doesn't matter whether or not she's reliable. This kind of cooperation is purely dependent on self-interests. While we can both benefit, this cooperation will be stable. But in any case, it won't bring us any harm. For Hua Biluo to borrow our power to give a blow to the first monastery can also count as helping us take revenge, so it's mutually beneficial, said Long Chen. Have you ever thought about what you're going to do once you kill Yin Wushuang? Asked Chu Yao worriedly. To tell the truth, no. Long Chen sighed. I know that killing Yin Wushuang will cause a great deal of trouble. But I really can't endure letting her live. But the problem also isn't that serious. Meng Qi and Chu Yao, you aren't members of the monasteries, so this won't implicate you. After all, this is an internal matter of the supermonastery. I've recorded everything that's happened in the secret realm in photographic jades. Luckily, I had already considered this possibility, and ever since entering the secret realm, I kept a photographic jade activated, so I have all the proof I could want. Although I disdain using such schemes, that doesn't mean that I'm an idiot. This time, we have to blow this matter up as much as possible. It would be best if we could even disturb the monastery head. I refuse to believe the first monastery is really capable of controlling everything. Since this matter has already reached this point, we just have to make it even bigger. The bigger of a ruckus we make, the more beneficial it will be to us. You've all reached the Four-Temper realm, and considering our talent and combat strength, as long as the monastery head isn't blind, they will definitely not allow geniuses like us to all be killed. That's why I said this world has no such thing as fairness. If you want fairness, you have to fight for it yourself. We have to make the super monastery see our value, and only then will they protect us. Right now, the secret realm is in the tranquil period before the storm. Although Hua Biluo has promised to work with us, and Mo Nian has said that he will stand by our side, those are outer strengths that can't be depended on. Only our own strength can be truly relied on. So during this time, we'll make the most of every moment to increase our strength. After saying that, Long Chen had everyone gather again. Other than Wild, all of them entered seclusion to increase their cultivation bases. As for Longchen, he also began to devour 3 connecting flower tendon pills, focusing on increasing his realm. At the same time, he pushed his divine ring to its max. He could smell the scent of blood coming. Chapter 429. As the day of the Jioli Secret Realm's exit opening approached, the secret realm entered a state of silence. Everyone was in seclusion. They used their remaining time to increase their cultivation base to the highest possible level, all to give themselves a greater chance of surviving in the upcoming battle. There was no longer any time to go searching for opportunities. Their lives were much more important. No matter how good the opportunity was, if you didn't have your life to enjoy it, it was still no use. Time passed. Within the cultivation world, time was like a constantly flowing river. 3 months went by extremely quickly. Within the depths of the secret realm, a huge mountain collapsed. A black-haired man stood on top of the rubble, his terrifying aura constantly soaring into the sky, causing space to constantly quiver. This black-haired man was holding a worn-down spear. But that spear emitted a killing intent like a bloodthirsty fiend. Longchen, this time I'll definitely kill you. This man was precisely the one Longchen had almost killed in Luo. After being in seclusion for so long, he had finally come out. A scarlet flame lit up the sky. That kind of temperature could dry seas and incinerate the heavens. A man covered with flames was standing at the peak of a mountain. Longchen, you stole my phoenix sparrow violet flame. But I still managed to obtain the flame ranked 4th on the beast flame rankings. This time, I'll burn you to ashes. Standing on the mountain peak, Huo Wufang was surrounded by flames, looking like a flame god. Haha, I, Shuewia, have finally come out again. Little fellows from the righteous path, come crawl beneath my feet. A fiendish laugh resounded through heaven and earth. A man wearing a blood-red robe had an evil smile on. Behind him was an illusory image. That image was an endless blood sea. Although it looked like a picture, an incredibly concentrated blood odor came from it, one that caused all of heaven and earth to change color. Longchen, you killed my little brother. I'll flay your skin, tear out your muscles, and turn you bones to dust. These words were normally ones that were spit out through clenched teeth, but they were said with such a calm expression that it was even more frightening. A tall man was standing with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes radiated a bright light that was like the point of a sharp blade, making it so others didn't dare look directly at him. Although he was just standing there indifferently, he seemed to contain the imposingness of a devil god looking down on all. His handsome face contained an endless iciness. This was someone who looked similar to Han Tianfeng. However, he was even more handsome than him. He was Han Tianfeng's big brother, the Supermonastery's #1 expert, Han Tianyu. At this time, there were over a dozen people surrounding him. One of those people was the one Longchen hated with all his being, Yin Wushuang. Yin Wushuang wrapped around Han Tianyu's arm, saying, "Brother Tianyu, let's go kill Longchen right now to get revenge for Tianfeng." Yin Wushuang had truly been terrified by Longchen. Longchen had become a serious heart devil for her, and she couldn't even close her eyes anymore without seeing his face. That face was one filled with killing intent. She had become incredibly cowardly now, not even able to travel alone. She had to have a large group of people by her side so that she could use them to run in case Longchen found her. These past 3 months had felt as long as 30 years for her. She wasn't even able to sleep, let alone cultivate. Once Han Tianyu had left seclusion, he had activated his specific communication device, and Yin Wushuang had immediately rushed over. She felt that the safest place in this world was by Han Tianyu's side. Let him live a few more days. To directly kill him is letting him off too lightly. Send out news that I've exited seclusion and that depending on my mood, I'll take his life whenever I want. Get him to wash his neck and wait for me, said Han Tianyu lightly. Then that's good. Let's make it so he has to spend every day restlessly waiting to die. Yin Wushuang clenched her teeth. There was still just over a month until the secret realm's exit opened. Countless experts were coming out of their seclusion. The secret realm immediately became lively again. But this liveliness was accompanied by endless slaughter and blood. As experts came out, huge battles were fought everywhere. The people exiting seclusion at this time were all top experts extremely confident in themselves. As for those people who were weaker, they were still in seclusion. Just increasing their cultivation base by the slightest bit was worth it to them. Atop Compass Mountain, Long Chen and the others also exited their seclusion. What gratified Long Chen was that everyone's cultivation bases had reached the mid-bone forging realm. As for Tang Wana, who possessed a gold spirit root, she had reached the 7th heaven stage of bone forging, which was the highest out of all of them. Furthermore, as she constantly refined the purest energy from the wind spirit stones, her wind energy once more transformed, and her wind blades had become much more solid and sharp. Tang Wana was the one with the highest cultivation base, but second place was not Meng Qi or the others. What was surprising was that it was actually Guoran. He had reached the peak of the 6th heaven stage, and he could advance to the 7th heaven stage at any moment. That had shocked all of them. Only Long Chen was still calm. He knew that Guoran walked an alternative path, and he wouldn't run into any bottlenecks. As long as he continued to firmly believe he could rely on forging items to become a crafting god, then by continuously consuming medicinal pills, his cultivation base would grow quickly and constantly. But as soon as he received an impact on his forging Tao, as soon as his confidence was shaken, then his cultivation base would forever stall. Long Chen had already warned him about that, but Guoran had still decided to choose that path. He was blazing an unwalked path to godhood. Walking that path was extremely dangerous, but at the same time, high risk signified high reward. Up until now, Guoran's decision had been extremely correct. Other than Luo Tsong, who was still at the 4th heaven stage, the others had reached the 5th or 6th heaven stage. That level of cultivation base was enough to shock the entire secret realm. This was all because Long Chen had decided to refine ringed high-grade pills. Because of that, all his pill furnaces had all been ruined, and he didn't have a single one anymore. However, those trash furnaces had at least served their mission in the end before breaking. At this time, Wild also had come over. He had already finished the Violet Phoenix Sparrow and was now working on the Barbaric Wind Beast. Wild's body hadn't necessarily changed much in this time, but his skin had turned a bronze color. With his current strength, he could crush steel into smithereens. His physical body was even more powerful than a magical beast's. Furthermore, after his skin had turned bronze, he became impervious to sword or spear. Even when Song Mingyuan launched a full power attack, he was only able to leave a small white mark on Wild's skin. At that time, Gu Yang and the others' jaws had dropped to the ground. This was no longer even human. Was there really someone who was impervious to sword or spear? If Wild was using a battle skill, then that was one thing, but Wild didn't know any, and even up to now, he only knew the simplest method to circulate qi. Long Chen noticed a faint mark had appeared on his forehead. Although it was very faint, it was definitely there. That mark wasn't the same as ordinary ancestral marks. This mark wasn't something Wild had called out, but something that had automatically appeared. That mark seemed to be hiding a volcano that might explode at any moment. Was this what the barbarian race expert had meant when he had said that as long as their physical bodies grew strong enough, they would automatically awaken their abilities? But in any case, Wild strength caused their collective team's power to rise a great deal. Now their squad could truly be called elites amongst elites. According to combat ability, each of them had at least reached the level of a chosen. It was just that those with softer temperaments like Meng Qi and Chu Yao wouldn't release that kind of undefeatable will. However, Gu Yang, Song Mingyuan, and the others had all experienced fierce battles and a rain of blood. Their hearts had long since become tempered, and when they fought, their will far surpassed the other so-called chosen. Gu Yang and the others had grown to their point on their own, and their will was not man-made by their sex. They were completely different. Other than their strength advancing, they also had 4 powerful helpers. Those 4 Violet Phoenix Sparrows had all reached the late 4th rank. To help those four grow, Meng Qi and the others had expended a great deal of effort, and Long Chen had also refined quite a few medicinal pills specialized for them. Of the four women, they would rotate, one of them bringing the four birds to go hunting. The reason they had all managed to grow so fast was because they had alternated hunting and cultivating. Long Chen noticed that after being raised by Meng Qi and the others, these birds had become much more human. They weren't as berserk as their mother, and they were extremely loyal. There was basically no need to worry about them suddenly betraying them. This was definitely because of the great care the four women had given them as they grew up. Although magical beasts were known for being berserk, they also had emotions. Once they fully accepted a master, they would never betray that person in their lifetime. Compared to fickle humans, magical beasts were actually much more trustworthy. The thing that excited Long Chen the most was that little Snow, who had been in a slumber after consuming the barbaric wind beast Sniden, had finally awoken. After he called out Little Snow from his spiritual space, all of them were shocked. Little Snow had shrunk a great deal and was now only 10 meters long. But his aura was something that caused people to feel a profound reverence. As soon as he appeared, those four violet phoenix sparrows all began to shiver. Not only had Little Snow shrunk a great deal, but that fiery red tuft of fur on his forehead had become the shape of a rhombus. When Meng Qi saw that, she was filled with disbelief. She told Long Chen that Little Snow was actually transforming his crystal core. Seeing that Long Chen didn't understand, she explained that Little Snow had dissolved his original crystal core and had condensed a new one. In other words, Little Snow had truly completely mutated and his rank would no longer be held back by his bloodline. As for how far he could actually grow, no one knew. This kind of crystal core transformation was something Meng Qi had only seen in ancient texts. But even that ancient text had only said that this was only a theoretical possibility. As for whether it was actually possible, it hadn't said. Long Chen was delighted and surprised. He hugged Little Snow's head and laughed. This way, Little Snow could always accompany him. Just a week after they all left seclusion, taking a brief period of relaxation before the great battle, there was someone who came by to send them a certain item. Chapter 430. The person who had come was someone from the second monastery. After handing over a photographic jade, he bowed to Long Chen and left. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. From the start, that person had not said a single word, but his expression had been grave. Long Chen pondered for a moment. He then had Little Snow guard outside while they all entered a tent to watch the photographic jade. A scene appeared in front of them. This scene was one of a man and woman fighting intensely. "It's Hua Biluo and Han Tianyu," exclaimed Tangwan. Hua Biluo and Han Tianyu were both holding swords, their auras surging imposingly. Countless flower petals had appeared behind Hua Biluo, and adding on her innate beauty, she truly seemed like a fairy of flowers. But they all knew that these flower petals were not decoration. They could sense that they had all been condensed from Hua Biluo's spiritual qi. Runes covered each petal, and a vast amount of spiritual qi was flowing from them to Hua Biluo. Long Chen was shocked to realize that these flower petals were not just some energy storage containers, but able to absorb energy from heaven and earth to supply to Hua Biluo. That was a similar effect to his own divine ring. However, the difference between the two was far too great. There was no way the flower petals could compare to his divine ring. However, the flower petals still pushed Hua Biluo's power to her peak, and with each slash of her sword, heaven and earth quivered, and the void was split open. This Hua Biluo really is powerful. Gu Yang and the others couldn't help clicking their tongues. This sword's power was practically capable of ripping open the blue dome of the heavens. But her movements didn't seem to contain any fury, and instead seemed like random blows. Their swords clashed repeatedly, and dust filled the air. Sword chi filled the sky and split open the ground, appearing dreadful and grand. Suddenly, Hua Biluo let out a cry and her sword pointed towards the sky. All the flower petals behind her condensed together, forming a huge 300-meter sword. When that sword appeared, heaven and earth changed color, and space contorted violently. It contained endless power as it slashed down on Han Tianyu. Han Tianyu's expression was solemn. Holding his sword in his hands, they briefly saw a golden rune light up on the back of his hands. But those runes faded in an instant, and instead, 2 runes had now appeared on his sword. They twisted around it, making it seem as if his sword had come to life as it emitted a faint cry, slashing at Hua Biluo's giant sword. Boom! Waves of qi exploded, and both Han Tianyu and Hua Biluo flew back. The place where they had been was a bottomless pit. After that, the image faded, as that was all that was recorded on this photographic jade. They're both so powerful. Everyone was speechless for a long moment. Those 2 were truly too powerful. Each of their attacks pushed their power to the pinnacle, but it seemed so effortless for them. The 2 of them had fought calmly, but considering the power behind their blows, the slightest carelessness could have caused one of them to die. Han Tianyu is said to be the Supermonastery's #1 expert, so I can accept him being this powerful. But who would have thought the always low-key Hua Biluo would also be able to draw even with him? Is that just how powerful ancient families are? Just a random one of them is able to match up to a sect's top expert? Asked an overwhelmed Guoran. When Hua Biluo had said that she was also a disciple from an ancient family who had come out for some tempering experience, she had made it seem as if she was just an ordinary disciple. But such an ordinary disciple was able to fight with a marvel genius like Han Tianyu. That was truly too shocking. Long Chen, which one of them do you think is stronger? Asked Meng Qi. It's definitely Han Tianyu. In that last exchange, although it seemed like a tie on the surface, Hua Biluo had already lost. Didn't you notice? After that exchange, the sword she condensed from her flower petals shattered, but the runic power on Han Tianyu's sword didn't immediately scatter. Only when the 2 of them were being blown back did the light from his sword fade. He was purposely hiding his power to make it seem like it was a draw. Long Chen's expression was solemn. Han Tianyu was much stronger than he had imagined. Although Han Tianfeng had been his brother, the difference between the 2 was like heaven and earth. Now when he recalled how Han Tianfeng had been deluded enough to think he could contest the first-place spot with his brother, he realized just how laughable that was. Why would he do this? Is it in order to win favor with Hua Biluo? Chu Yao couldn't help asking. Perhaps. To me, it seems like Han Tianyu would like to join the Hua family, but he also isn't willing to abandon Yin Wushuang's family. So currently he is being indecisive. However, Hua Biluo's method were superior. Constantly ignoring him had definitely been the right choice for her. For a genius like Han Tianyu, he's definitely unable to handle being disregarded by others. So Hua Biluo is clearly superior in that aspect. Long Chen smiled. Boss really is boss. These girl pickup techniques are really unrivaled beneath the heavens. In the middle of Guoran's praise and bootlicking, he was kicked away by Long Chen. Only then did Guoran remember that it wasn't just the 2 of them. To talk about Long Chen's pickup techniques in front of this many beautiful women was no different than causing trouble for Long Chen. Boss, I was wrong, apologized Guoran. Meng Qi and the others just laughed and didn't say anything about it. They didn't have the heart to care about such a thing right now. What they wanted to know was why Hua Biluo had sent this photographic jade over. Long Chen pondered for a moment and said, Hua Biluo and Han Tianyu were fighting with at most 50% of their strength. They kept back too much, but from this, it seems Han Tianyu is a level higher than Hua Biluo. 50%? Yes, 50%. But you don't need to be so shocked. They are both peerless geniuses, ones who stand at the peak of their realm. There's nothing curious about this. Hua Biluo did this to give me some extremely precious information. She's hoping I will back off slightly. She thinks that with Han Tianyu present, I have absolutely zero chance of killing Yin Wushuang, smiled Long Chen. Hua Biluo's not a bad person, said Meng Qi. Hua Biluo had repeatedly tried to persuade Long Chen to give up on killing Yin Wushuang, all for his own good. In truth, considering her position, for Long Chen to kill Yin Wushuang should make her clap her hands in delight. That was using Long Chen to help her remove an enemy. But she had abandoned that kind of selfish desire to persuade Long Chen from putting himself into an impossible situation. That made Meng Qi and the others look favorably upon her. "Boss, I have something I want to ask you," said Guoran carefully. "All right? When did you get so courteous?" laughed Long Chen. "What I want to ask is how high are your chances of defeating Han Tianyu?" After hesitating for a while, Guoran finally asked this important question. Hearing him say that, everyone turned to look at Long Chen closely. This was also what they all wanted to know. Long Chen smiled slightly. You all don't trust me. Fine, I'll tell you my thoughts. Currently, Han Tianyu has yet to bring out his full power, and he is sure to have many other abilities. Furthermore, it is also rumored he obtained some treasure that we didn't see him take out in this photographic jade. However, that hasn't impacted my confidence. If I fight him, I have a 90% chance not being defeated, a 50% chance of defeating him, but as for killing him, at most, I have only a 20% chance. All of them turned lifeless. If they didn't know Long Chen's character, they would think he was just boasting. But Long Chen never acted like that, especially not when it concerned everyone's safety. Then what he was saying was absolute fact. To have a 50% chance of defeating the Supermonastery's top expert, just what kind of concept was that? That was too shocking. Did you think that since I spent all this time refining pills, that I forgot how to fight? Laughed Long Chen. To tell the truth, after refining for so long, Long Chen really had an urge to puke. If it wasn't for everyone, he definitely wouldn't have been able to endure it. It really was true that it had been a long time since he had had a battle. But during this time, he had advanced to the 9th heaven stage of tendon transformation. Even Long Chen didn't know how strong he had become now. "Boss, why don't you hurry and seclude yourself to cultivate? If you break through to bone forging, then wouldn't you be able to crush Han Tianyu with a fart?" Guoran, be more civilized. Meng Qi and the others blushed, and it was Tang Wan'er who angrily rebuked him. Guoran really needed to pay attention to the situation when he spoke. How could it be that simple? Long Chen smiled bitterly. For others, advancing past the 9th heaven stage would bring them to the next realm. But he had to reach the 13th heaven stage before reaching the next realm. Furthermore, for the 10th heaven stage and up, each advancement was shockingly difficult. It required an ocean's worth of medicinal pills. He still didn't have that many pills. Right now, the only useful medicinal ingredients he had were the ones in his life ring. But those were seeds to be sold, and they were the wealth that would allow everyone a chance to soar in the future. He couldn't waste them. Right now, he couldn't increase his cultivation base quickly anymore. What he needed to do was make sure Yin Wushuang forever stayed within the secret realm to comfort his brother's departed spirits. As for what would happen later, he could only take it step by step. The only thing that Long Chen regretted was that despite clearly being able to feel something in the secret realm calling to him, he was unable to find it. Now they were about to leave. Could it be he would have to wait another 100 years to once more enter the secret realm? But the spatial channel to enter only permitted those at the tendon transformation realm to enter. He couldn't possibly just not cultivate for a century, right? But panicking about this also wasn't a solution. Right now, he had everyone relax as much as they could. Every day, Long Chen accompanied all his brothers in drinking, and accompanied Meng Qi and the others in chatting and laughing. This brief moment was an incomparably happy time. During this time, there were a few more people who came to disturb them. They cursed Long Chen, saying he wouldn't have a good death, that he would be executed by Han Tianyu. But after they were killed by Guoran's arrows, it calmed back down again. Half a month passed by. Now Long Chen and the others packed up, preparing to go directly to the two-world mountain at the core on the secret realm. That was where the secret realm's exit would open. Chapter 431. Two-World Mountain was located at the core of the Jiuli's secret realm. Although there were many entrances, Two-World Mountain was the only one exit. Due to how much time had passed, it was unknown how the initial explorers had managed to find it. But in order to leave the secret realm, you had to leave through here. Two World Mountain was an extremely particular mountain. It was 1,000 miles wide and 10 miles high. It had two mountain peaks, with an empty space between them. The ground there was a scarlet red color. That was from being dyed with blood. Each time the exit opened, the righteous and corrupt paths would undergo an immense life and death battle here. This place was littered with broken weapons, as well as some eroded skeletons. A faint sobbing sound still seemed to linger in the air. After countless years, it was unknown just how many righteous and corrupt disciples had become pieces of dust here. Every inch of space here was filled with the aura of death. Currently, there were still 3 days until the exit opened. All the righteous and corrupt disciples had gathered here from all directions. Both sides were separated by 12 miles, each minding their own business. Even the savage corrupt disciples had grave expressions. Occasionally, they would glance over at the side of the righteous path. As for the righteous path, they were tightly clenching their weapons, keeping watch over the corrupt disciples uneasily. This was an unavoidable battle. When it was time for the exit to open, a spatial gate would open over the battlefield of Two World Mountain. This spatial gate would only be open for a quarter hour. Considering how many disciples there were, that time was far from enough. So this was an extremely cruel trial. The defeated could only die. The Two Paths disciples had begun gathering a week ago. But when everyone had gathered, they were all given a shock. There were actually no less than 10,000 righteous disciples present now. As for the corrupt disciples, they didn't number much less than the righteous disciples. The number of people present in the secret realm this time was somehow 10 times greater than any other time in history. No one knew just how that had happened. Although there are many entrances to the secret realm, each entrance could only accept a limited number of people. Once that number was reached, it was impossible for any more people to go through that entrance. However, some people's eyes were a bit sharper and they sneered once they saw through the problem. They had realized that this time, a great deal of disciples had come from small, weaker sects. In other words, something had to have happened with the small entrances that were in the control of those weaker sects, allowing them to send in more people. These disciples all had weak foundations, and their combat strength was the lowest of everyone present. Once the battle started, they would just be cannon fodder. In the upcoming battle, it wasn't necessarily a straight-on battle. Instead, it was more accurately a massacre. The experts from the righteous path would charge amongst the corrupt disciples, while the experts from the corrupt path would also charge amongst the righteous disciples. They would wantonly slaughter the weak for their spatial rings. True battles between the top experts were rather rare. That was because they all were focused on killing more enemies to get more treasures. In this particular clash, the ones to die were mostly the weaker ones. Those who were stronger were like lions that stood at the peak of the food chain, and they were always the ones who benefited the most. The disciples that were staring at their enemies were all either thinking of how they would stay alive or how they would snatch more treasures. However, neither side was saying anything. Although there were almost 20,000 disciples present, the entire crowd was deathly silent. However, once a certain group of people slowly walked over, all their pupils shrunk. "It's Long Chen." One person was at the front, his clothes fluttering in the wind. He appeared to be some celestial emperor looking down on mortals, filled with arrogance and disdain. Long Chen's aura had grown even stronger. Although his cultivation base was only at the tendon transformation realm, that aura was like a boulder crushing everyone's hearts. Seeing him, both the righteous and corrupt disciples' hearts involuntarily began to pound wildly. This was a legendary person. When he had first entered the secret realm, he had only been at blood condensation. But even though he had been chased down by Yin Luo, he had still survived. From then on, images of Long Chen's actions had never stopped coming. Many of those scenes were all incredibly shocking, almost unbelievable. There were countless photographic jades that had spread. 2 scenes in particular were exceptionally shocking. One of those was from Compass Mountain when Long Chen had revealed an incredible power, defeating Yin Wushuang and killing Han Tianfeng. As for the other scene, that was even more amazing. It was just that at the beginning, only a small portion of people had managed to see it. It only began to spread crazily later. That was the scene of Long Chen chasing after Yin Luo. When they had seen that, everyone had been stupefied. The Corrupt Path's #1 expert had lost an arm and was miserably fleeing. And the one chasing him was Long Chen. Their positions had been reversed from the beginning of the secret realm. Now Long Chen's name had truly created a controversy amongst the righteous and corrupt paths. Countless people felt reverence for his fierceness. Just how ruthless was this person? He could fight across realms against a peak expert, and was even able to chase after him. That practically toppled all their understanding of the world. If Yin Luo was called a peak expert, then what should Long Chen be called? A peak monster. Long Chen was walking forward. Seeing both sides separated by a dozen miles, he decided not to go over to either side. Instead, he walked down the center between the two parties. He didn't want to be associated with either side. The corrupt disciples were his enemies, while the righteous disciples were not his friends. Behind Long Chen were 5 peerless beauties. Their dresses leisurely floated in the wind, looking like 5 fairies that had descended from the heavens. These 5 were Meng Qi, Chu Yao, Tang Wana, Lu Fang'er, and Yi Zhiqiu. Previously, they had been a bit nervous about coming here, as they knew an incredibly bloody battle would be fought here. But now that they had arrived, their nervousness instead became calm. The figure in front of them gave them a great deal of confidence. That tall and straight back was still unhurried even in the face of all these experts. This imposing atmosphere was not even able to make him flinch. It was as if even if the heavens collapsed, he would still be able to handle it. Behind the 5 women were Guoran, Gu Yang, Song Mingyuan, Li Qi, and Yu Zifeng. The 5 of them were proudly staying behind him. To be able to follow Long Chen was their lives' greatest pride. As for the person at the very back, he was a huge giant, his muscles bulging, his arms thicker than a person's legs. A shockingly huge spiked club rested on his shoulder. He looked like some kind of giant god, filled with a domineeringness. This was wild. After all his bitter cultivation, those 2 peak 5th-rank magical beasts had both been thrown into his stomach. He felt as if his body might explode, and he longed for a battle. Wild's gaze swept over the righteous and corrupt disciples. His gaze stopped temporarily on the larger fellows. Being stared at by him caused those people to feel a chill as if some beast had set its gaze on them. Long Chen, you heinous villain. You still dare come here? Hee, in a bit, we'll all see just how you'll die. A monastery disciple stood out from the crowd, his gaze seemingly delighting in Long Chen's anticipated demise. That was someone from the 7th monastery. Obviously, he was working hard to fawn over the 1st monastery. Seeing how awe-inspiring Long Chen appeared, he couldn't help being filled with envy. Long Chen was just an insignificant brat from the last-place monastery. When it came to status, he wasn't even fit to carry his shoes. But somehow, he had run into some heaven-defying dog's-hit luck in the secret realm, growing to this point. He had long since gone crazy with jealousy. That was especially true with those 5 fairy-like beauties behind him. He was like the moon set off by sparkling stars, and he directly cursed him in his fury. As soon as that person opened his mouth, quite a few people looked at Long Chen in anticipation. Everyone had heard of Long Chen's ruthlessness. They wanted to see what he would do. Long Chen didn't even glance over, nor did his footsteps pause. He raised his right hand slightly and pointed out a single finger. A violet bolt of lightning appeared on his finger and suddenly shot out in front of their horrified gazes. The person who had ridiculed Long Chen was instantly blown to pieces. The bloody stench of this place grew even stronger. There were quite a few people who had been standing by his side, also wearing ridiculing expressions. They all shrieked and fled for their lives. However, Long Chen and the others didn't even glance at them. They continued walking forward, acting as if nothing had happened. How vicious! People's hearts shook. Both the righteous and corrupt disciples were completely intimidated by Long Chen's methods. His attack had been far too quick, so fast that it was impossible to dodge or block. They hadn't even clearly seen his attack before that person had died. That had been a powerful favored, but he hadn't had the slightest ability to retaliate. The most horrifying thing was Long Chen's completely calm expression. There was not even the slightest ripple even after killing someone. Long Chen, you perverted traitor, you vicious slaughterer, are you trying to become enemies with the entire righteous path? Suddenly, a voice rang out from amongst the crowd. But that person was very crafty and hid himself within the crowd, and it was impossible to see him. That voice continued to curse. How could you be so vicious as to kill someone just because he said something you didn't like? Do you think you can kill all of us? You're the absolute scum of the righteous path, and everyone wants you punished. Just wait, when Han Tianyu arrives, the first thing he'll do is make you into a corpse for... That hidden person was cursing to his heart's content when he suddenly let out a mournful shriek. Then the voice disappeared. Everyone was startled. But then they saw one of the women behind Long Chen had formed an odd hand seal. Lu Fanger sneered, "Contemptible and shameless fellow, did you think it would be impossible to find you just because you hid yourself?" Obviously, Lu Fanger had used some unknown technique to lock onto that person's position and then use a spiritual attack to kill him. Haha. Now that 2 experts from the righteous path had been killed, a chosen from the corrupt path sneered, "Dogs killing dogs, truly not bad." But as soon as he said that, his expression changed completely because a huge crossbow was now pointed at him. Chapter 432. Boom! Before he could react, a black light instantly reached him. That was a huge, black arrow that instantly pierced through his chest and exploded. Broken pieces of the arrow shot out in all directions. Dozens of corrupt disciples were hit by the aftermath, and only a few of them managed to survive through luck. Guo Ran was the same as Long Chen, and he didn't even glance over. Resting his crossbow on his shoulder, he continued walking behind Long Chen. "Long Chen, you go too far." One of the top experts of the corrupt path angrily roared. This person was over 6 feet tall and his cultivation base had reached the mid-bone forging realm. The fluctuations from his body were extremely powerful. As soon as that person stood out, quite a few corrupt experts took out their weapons, ready to attack at any time. Obviously, this person's status in the corrupt path was extremely high. Long Chen paused for a moment to look at this person. He shook his head. "For you to put it like this, I really am hurt. Don't make me out to seem so vile. In truth, I really am a kind-hearted person." Kind-hearted? Everyone's faces twitched. He killed people like killing chickens. No, that wasn't right. When people killed chickens, they usually had to at least look. He killed people without batting an eye, as if crushing an ant. Did the word kind-hearted really have the slightest bit of relation to him? "Long Chen, you actually sneak attacked members my corrupt path. Do you think my corrupt path is easy to bully?" Raged that person. "Have you taken me to be an outsider? The righteous and corrupt paths have fought for so many years. You've bullied us and we've bullied you. Everyone is already familiar with that. So do your words have any meaning?" said Long Chen. Do you believe me when I say with a single word, I can instantly wipe out all of you?" Long Chen's relationship with the righteous path was something everyone knew now. Currently, Long Chen was independent of either the righteous or corrupt path. He was also the smallest group present. No matter how powerful Long Chen was, he was just one person. However, they had over 10,000 corrupt disciples present, and they were sure that if they suppressed Long Chen, no one from the righteous path would come out to help. Instead, they would probably cheer. "Do you believe me when I say that if you continue talking, I will immediately cut off your head?" Long Chen indifferently looked at him. Who didn't know how to brag? That person's aura immediately erupted furiously. At the same time, hundreds of people by his side released their auras, ready to attack at any moment. As for the righteous disciples, they celebrated when they saw this. They really hadn't expected Long Chen to be so brazen as to directly kill so many corrupt disciples. That was a head-on provocation to them. There were also many who silently admired Long Chen inside. This was a true man. Normally, The countless righteous disciples were always terrified of the powerful corrupt disciples. But Long Chen's group only had 12 people, and in the face of almost 20,000 corrupt disciples, he didn't seem the slightest bit concerned. What kind of boldness was that? Right now, Long Chen had shown up, becoming a third power outside the righteous and corrupt paths. This group of his had far too few people, and yet, the imposingness he had displayed had shocked all of them. This was all done on purpose by Long Chen. He could already tell that there was no longer any retreat for him. The righteous path refused to tolerate him, and the corrupt path also refused to accept him. In that kind of situation, he needed to show his own power, making people too intimidated. Otherwise, if he revealed the slightest weakness or tolerance, all that would come for him was death. Long Chen had already told his people that there was no way they could smoothly leave this place. If they wanted to live, then they needed climb out of an endless pile of corpses. Meng Qi and the others had long since prepared themselves now. Since this battle was inevitable, then what was the point of being so careful? Since they could die at any time, why not go out with a bang? Long Chen expressionlessly looked at that corrupt chosen. Even the ones behind him were just looking on indifferently. They hadn't even raised their weapons. They were completely ignoring them. That was a silent ridicule and insult to them. That corrupt chosen's face turned purple from rage. Right now he was stuck in a hard position. He was a top expert, and was on the same level as Han Tianfeng and Yin Wushuang. Although the current him had tempered 4 bones, he had no assurance when it came to Long Chen. However, Long Chen's gaze was truly unendurable. If he retreated at this time, his reputation would plummet. That was practically worse to him than being killed, and clenching his teeth, he was just about to charge at Long Chen. "Brother Wu, wait a moment." Just as he was about to charge out, he was held back by another person who said, "Long Chen is already about to die to Han Tianyu. He only has a short time before his death. Why bother lowering yourself to his level? If you attack, wouldn't you just end up helping Han Tianyu?" The person who had been called Brother Wu sighed in relief. He didn't want to fight with Long Chen. He had just been putting on a bold face. Now he could borrow this person's words to withdraw. He gratefully said, "Thank you for the reminder, Brother Zhao. Otherwise, I would have ended up helping those idiots from the righteous path." He turned and looked icily at Long Chen. "I'll allow you to live for a few more hours. I'll let you enjoy your time before your miserable death." "Teeth gutless." Gua Ran sneered, his eyes containing a trace of disappointment. "Why aren't they coming over?" asked a confused Wild. "Because they're afraid of death." Gua Ran shrugged helplessly. "Oh, then are we fighting?" "We're definitely going to have to fight, but it will probably have to wait for a while." "All right, then I'm going to take a nap." After saying that, Wild lay down just like that, falling asleep. Laying down his club, he ended up using it as a pillow. He would occasionally let out a loud snore. Long Chen and the others were already accustomed to seeing this. Wild's body was different from others, and his body was unable to hold any spiritual qi. In other words, he would only have energy once he had eaten. But as soon as he became hungry, that energy would sharply fall. Sleeping was the best way for him to conserve his strength. They knew that, but the righteous and corrupt disciples didn't. They all looked on with bewilderment. At this kind of tense time, he was still able to sleep just like that. These people had already been waiting here for many days, and their nerves had been stretched taut the entire time. They didn't even dare blink their eyes, afraid they would never be able to open them again. Long Chen swept his gaze over the crowd, and his heart sank slightly. He had still underestimated the power of the 7 prefectures. There had to be at least thousands of chosen-level experts present amongst the crowd. As for experts on the same level as Han Tianfeng, there were over 100 of them. Of the remaining experts, over 80% were favored. Ordinary core disciples only took up a bit more than 1/10 of the people present. But after thinking about it for a moment, he understood that this was due to the cruel natural selection of the Jiuli's secret realm. Most ordinary disciples had already fallen. As for a portion of them, they had killed favored and taken their Dao marks, going from an ordinary core disciple to a favored. But for an ordinary disciple to kill a favored, just how difficult was that? So obviously the majority of those ordinary disciples had already died within the secret realm. Long Chun completely ignored those ordinary disciples, and even those favored didn't need to be put in his calculations. Only chosen were able to pose some threat to them. Their numbers had far surpassed Long Chen's estimation. Furthermore, he noticed that the true top experts of the righteous and corrupt paths had yet to appear. It seemed he had arrived too early. Long Chen's group sat down to rest, closing their eyes and keeping themselves in peak condition. As for the other disciples, not one of them made a single sound. No one else dared further provoke him. Bit by bit, time passed. After 2 hours, a burst of dust blew into the air, and the ground began to tremble. A huge figure was rushing over. It was a 6-horned silver scale bull that was over 300 meters long, and its aura had reached the peak of the 4th realm. On its back was a black-haired man, standing with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were 2 stars, and his aura was like the sea. Some sort of formless energy roamed around him, causing space to quiver. It's Shui Wuya. The righteous disciples let out startled cries when they recognized this person. He was someone who stood at the peak of the corrupt path. Just his name was like a huge hammer that smashed people's hearts, making it hard for them to breathe. To the righteous disciples, Shui Wuya was even more terrifying than Yin Luo, as Shui Wuya was truly a bloodthirsty fiend. None of the righteous disciples who encountered him lived to tell the tale. The most terrifying thing about him was his abnormal temperament. He delighted in slaughter, and his favorite thing to see was people's expressions right before they died. As for the 6-horned silver scale bull, it was like a huge silver mountain as it rushed over in this direction. Behind it were thousands of disciples. Those were all Shui Wuya's followers, and they were all elites amongst elites. They only stopped when they were in front of the righteous disciples. Those righteous disciples were all terrified, involuntarily retreating. Although the 6-horned silver scale bull was still a few miles away, their blood still turned cold. They weren't afraid of that magical beast, but the person on its back. That person was practically a fiend. Shui Wuya swept his gaze over those terrified expressions and smiled cruelly. He licked his lips, looking thirsty for blood. It was as if he could already taste it, and he was filled with anticipation. Those righteous disciples' expressions all changed. Shui Wuya's bloodthirsty eyes were exactly as described in the stories. However, he only icily looked over them without directly doing anything to them. Instead, he turned his 6-horned silver scale bull to go towards Long Chen. Chapter 433. Seeing Shui Wuya leave, all those righteous disciples let out sighs of relief. Despite having known that he definitely wouldn't attack, they had still been incredibly nervous. None of the peak experts of the righteous path had arrived, as the decisive battle would only occur on the final day before the secret realm opened. No one wished to take the initiative to break that tradition. If Shui Wuya had charged in of his own accord, that would lead to dissatisfaction amongst the other experts of the corrupt path, as he would end up taking all the benefits for himself. In truth, the corrupt disciples cared more about rules than the righteous disciples. Now that Shui Wuya was charging at Long Chen, quite a few people were delighted. Wasn't Long Chen acting like some badass just now? Then let's see if he really had that ability. Shui Wuya slowed down once he was a mile away from Long Chen, arrogantly looking down on him. You are Long Chen? If you know but are still asking, then are you an idiot? It wasn't Long Chen who replied, but Guo Ran who lazily took his place. Good, it's been many years since someone dared talk to me this way. Shui Wuya actually laughed. He didn't grow angry, but that bloodthirsty light in his eyes grew denser. Don't bother with that. You think you can be arrogant? Is riding a stupid cow so amazing? No one dares say such things to you? You really are a horse that doesn't know his face is long. Do you know? No one here wants to even acknowledge you, as just that is embarrassing for us. But the pitiful you doesn't even know that. If you have words to say, spit them out. Stop wasting our time. If you want to die, then just kill yourself. My boss is too lazy to handle you. Speaking of which, before you kill yourself, dig yourself a grave. Then after you kill yourself, bury yourself. Everyone's too busy to bother with you, said Guoran. Everyone jumped in fright. Just who was Xue Wuya? He was publicly known as a bloodthirsty fiend, vicious and cruel. Even the corrupt disciples would shiver when they saw him. But Guoran now told him to kill himself? And to even dig a grave and bury himself? Had he gone mad? If you landed in Xue Wuya's hands, having a quick death was an extravagance. Furthermore, it was only Guoran who didn't seem to possess any aura or powerful will. Everyone could clearly see that of Long Chen's group, he was the absolute weakest. Was he borrowing Long Chen's might to intimidate others? Ha ha ha. Xue Wuya laughed crazily. Ever since he had stepped onto his cultivation path, there hadn't been a single person who dared say such things to him. Good, very good. Little brat, I've decided to take your life. I really want to see whether you'll be able to say such things once you're in my hands. What no one had expected was that Xue Wuya now charged at Guoran. There hadn't been the slightest sign of him moving, and his speed was incredible, making him appear like a phantom. By the time others reacted, his hand was about to reach Guoran's throat. Long Chen, whose eyes were still closed, raised his hand slightly, but then decided to take it back. Just as Xue Wuya's hand was about to reach Guoran's throat, a golden spear thrust at his chest, the power behind it tearing apart the void. Xue Wuya was slightly surprised. He hadn't expected that the large, bald man beside Guoran would possess such great strength. Even he couldn't ignore this spear. Most shocking to him was that this spear contained an incredibly courageous will and an unwavering spirit. Before attacking, Xue Wuya had seen that there were 5 women sitting behind Long Chen, while Guoran and the others were sitting in front of him. Although he wanted to test Long Chen to see if he was as powerful as the stories said, he didn't want to attack him at this exact moment. However, Guoran's words had sparked his killing intent. He wanted to use his fastest speed to capture Guoran and bring him back to the corrupt disciples. To sadistically kill Guoran in front of everyone would be something exceptionally enjoyable for him. His goal had been to capture Guoran in one move and then retreat. He trusted that even if Long Chen and the others reacted at that time, they would already be helpless to do anything. However, as soon as he took action, he realized something was wrong. From the start, Long Chen didn't appear to want to move at all. As for Guoran, he didn't seem the slightest bit panicked despite his claw approaching his throat. Instead, his eyes contained a powerful ridicule. Xue Wuya shifted his hand, and a blood-colored palm smashed onto Gu Yang's spear. Gu Yang immediately felt as if his arms were about to break, and his blood surged within him. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He was astonished. This attack had contained his full strength. However, it had easily been brushed aside by Xue Wuya. Xue Wuya really was just too powerful. While Gu Yang was shocked, Xue Wuya was also astonished. His blow might have appeared simple, but in order to finish this attack quickly, he had used 80% of his power. If it was an ordinary chosen, they would have been instantly crushed to death. But Gu Yang was only forced back a few steps. He clearly hadn't suffered any injury. Xue Wuya had no time to bother about that at this time. After forcing away Gu Yang with a single palm, he was just about to turn back to capturing Guoran when a chilling sword chi stabbed towards his head. Sword cultivator? Xue Wuya was astonished. Sword cultivators were said to the cultivators with the highest destructive power. They focused their life on the sword, and each one of their sword blows contained their full heart and soul, as well as their life's will and determination. This sword chi's power immediately locked him down. That was the terror of sword cultivators. You had to block each of their attacks as it was impossible to dodge them. If you dodged, you would immediately lose any initiative or imposingness. That would bring about a torrent of attacks that would lead directly to your death. Xue Wuya's expression became a bit unsightly. He hadn't expected the unremarkable people that followed Long Chen to be so problematic. He finally realized that the reason Long Chen didn't attack him and why the others were only indifferently looking on at him was because they were not at all afraid of him. That caused his fury to soar. These people dared disregard him? With an icy snort, blood chi filled his hand, and his fist smashed at that sword chi. The sword chi shattered, but the berserk will contained within it caused his expression to change slightly, and he involuntarily took 3 steps back. That exchange caused everyone's expressions to change. They were all filled with shock, looking in disbelief at a man whose face was now slightly pale. Impossible! Shuewiahi? He was capable of knocking him back 3 steps? Just who is that person? Just what kind of people are beside Long Chen? That bald man managed to block one of Shuewia's attacks, and now this person is actually able to knock him back. Everyone became lifeless. Shuewia was a peak expert amongst the corrupt. He was on the same level as Yin Luo and the others. Someone who stood at the peak of his realm had still been forced back. If it had been Long Chen, then that would still be acceptable. After all, Long Chen had his impressive battle accomplishments. But the people who forced him back were 2 unknown people. That was an unacceptable fact to these people. After forcing back Shuewia, Yu Zifeng also suffered a backlash. That sword contained his heart and soul. For his sword chi to be shattered caused some injury to his mind, and his expression paled slightly. However, although Yu Zifeng and Gu Yang had suffered a slight injury, their hearts were filled with pride. They had originally just been ordinary core disciples. In the face of these geniuses, they had been always looked down upon. But now, they could already exchange blows with peak experts. That kind of pride was something only they could understand. At the same time, they were filled with gratefulness towards Long Chen. This was only possible because Long Chen had dragged them up here step by step. Otherwise, they would have never been able to see the scenery from this height. Seeing that both his attacks had been blocked, Shuewia's expression turned ugly. A perfect sneak attack had turned out like this. He really had been humiliated. Die! Shuewia roared and a palm came crashing down on Guoran. This palm caused blood chi to soar into the sky, and a murderous aura locked onto Guoran. You should die instead. Guoran sneered, and his arm became a metal arm. Runes flashed, and many little holes opened on the arm. When those holes appeared, Shuewia's scalp turned numb, and a powerful sensation of danger filled his heart. Thousands of black lights shot out at him. They contained so much power that each of them made a space-tearing whistling as they flew. They instantly arrived right in front of Shuewia. Their sharpness made his hair stand on end. With no way to attack Guoran, Shuewia's aura exploded out, and a bone-like armor appeared in front of him. Illusory bone armor. Others let out startled cries. That was an ability specific to bone-forging experts. Only once they had tempered their bones to a practically flawless state could they condense this kind of defense. Normally, to condense this armor required you to have tempered at least 4 bones. But not just anyone was truly capable of using it in battle. Only top experts were capable of it. Ordinary people were only able to condense an illusory bone robe. Although they looked similar, the defensive strength was incomparable. Whether it was the robe or the armor, they were both a kind of defense only usable when spiritual chi had been condensed to a pinnacle. This technique's defensive strength was extremely great. Those thousands of black lights smashed onto Shuewia's body, causing loud booming sounds with each one of them. Shuewia was directly blown back 300 meters, appearing extremely wretched. The entire crowd was silent. They all looked at Guoran's metallic arm like they were seeing a ghost. Chapter 434. Shuewia was shocked and infuriated. Although his illusory bone armor had blocked Guoran's attack, he was still covered in cold sweat. Seeing those scattered needles on the ground, the runic light coming from them gave him chills. If he hadn't reacted at the first moment and summoned the illusory bone armor, he would have been turned into a sieve. No physical body could possibly block such sharp needles when they were shot out with this kind of force. Although it wouldn't have necessarily taken his life, it would be impossible to avoid being heavily injured. Before the righteous and corrupt battle had even started, he had already been forced into a miserable position. Suddenly, clapping rang out. A group of people grandly walked over. The person at the front was wearing a white dress. She was tall and slender, her skin white as snow, and she gracefully walked over. "It's Hua Biluo." The righteous disciples let out exclamations. Hua Biluo was a peak expert in the righteous path. Shui Wuya's arrival had been like a heavy stone oppressing the righteous disciples' hearts. Now that Hua Biluo had arrived, their morale immediately soared. There were thousands of disciples behind Hua Biluo. Almost half of them were monastery disciples. Hua Biluo truly had skillful methods to be able to gather so many disciples. Hua Biluo was clapping as she brought everyone to stand by Long Chen. Wonderful, really wonderful. Who would have expected that Brother Long's subordinates were all hidden dragons and crouching tigers? My eyes really have been opened. As soon as Hua Biluo arrived, she had just managed to see Shui Wuya attacking. Her evaluation of Long Chen's power rose even further. Previously, she had only been interested in Long Chen's individual power. She hadn't really cared about the others. But just now, whether it was Gu Yang or Yu Zifeng, the power they had released was far greater than ordinary chosen. They wouldn't even be much weaker than people on the level of Yin Wushuang. That gave her a shock. Sister Biluo is too courteous. After not meeting for so long, you've become even more beautiful. Long Chen stood up and smiled. Since they were allied, he naturally didn't feel right sitting. The others also got up. Of course, Wild was an exception. To overpraise me like this in front of such beautiful women, if I didn't know your character, I really would suspect you were intentionally mocking me. Hua Biluo couldn't help laughing when she saw Meng Qi, Chu Yao, and the other beautiful women. Let me give you an introduction. This is Senior Apprentice Brother Chang from the 4th Monastery. This is Senior Apprentice Brother Zhao from the 6th Monastery. Hua Biluo introduced the leaders of her alliance, and Long Chen politely greeted them. But he could see the contempt in their eyes. Although they weren't looking down their noses at him, it was still obvious to him. However, Long Chen had to give Hua Biluo face. As for what those people thought of him, he didn't particularly care. Guoran and the others could also tell that these people were too arrogant, causing them to feel a bit uncomfortable. Just who had the qualifications to be so arrogant in front of Long Chen? Hey, who do you think you are? Is your status so amazing? You dare look down on people? Scolded Guoran. Quite a few people's expressions sank, and even Hua Biluo was slightly angered inside. Although she also knew these people were too arrogant, on the surface, they still hadn't done anything. Scolding them like this was a bit too much. Guoran continued, "And you, in front of my boss, you are just a dreg. Just now, my boss decided not to do anything to you, but if he had, you'd have long since died. If you aren't going to fuck off now, what are you waiting for? You actually don't know how to do this little, but you still think you can call yourself an expert?" Following Guoran's gaze, they saw the distant Shui Wuya was just standing there, his expression extremely gloomy. He couldn't leave, but he also couldn't stay. Now he was in an awkward position. This still wasn't the time for the decisive battle. He couldn't rashly go all out, but if he just left like this, he really would have lost all his prestige. Now people realized Guoran was cursing Shui Wuya. However, quite a few people could tell that Guoran was indirectly cursing others. These people actually dared look down on someone like Long Chen? Did they think a grand background was something so amazing? "You're looking to die." Shui Wuya raged. This was the most humiliating moment of his life. He was already on the verge of exploding. "Shui Wuya, you should return. You won't get anything from here," said Hua Biluo. Her words were entirely correct. He really wouldn't be able to obtain anything unless he decided to initiate the righteous and corrupt battle without care of others. However, he wouldn't do such a thing. When it came to the top experts of the corrupt path, he was not the only one. If he did that, he would offend all those other experts that had yet to arrive. I'll allow you to live for a little while longer. Shui Weia took a deep breath, in the end deciding to return to the corrupt path's side. He was not able to be as free and unrestrained as Long Chen, capable of taking action whenever he wanted. However, he was an extremely quick-witted person. No one would be able to run from this battle, so a few more hours didn't matter. Brother Long, don't stand here. Come with us. After all, you are a member of our righteous path, and we should be working together against our enemies, smiled Hua Biluo. Before Long Chen could reply, a man frowned and said, "That's no good." By standing here, Long Chen has already expressed that he is no longer a member of our righteous path. Why do we have to care about him? This person was a monastery disciple, and was also a chosen. His words immediately caused Hua Biluo's expression to change. She icily said, "In the righteous and corrupt battles, we should all be working together against our common enemy, the corrupt path. What purpose do you have to say such a thing?" She really hadn't expected someone to interfere like this. Although Long Chen had had problems with the first monastery, the righteous path's inner strife had to be ignored so they could unify against the corrupt path. Sister Biluo, Long Chen's reputation is something everyone knows. You want us to stand together with such a person? I, Li Changhao, am a true man, and I cannot forgive such a person, he said righteously. Shut the fuck up. My boss was framed by others, raged Guoran. Framed? If he really was innocent, who would have wanted to frame him? Why didn't anyone come frame me? Do you think we're all idiots? He said disdainfully. You. Guoran was completely furious. This bastard really was looking to die. If he didn't have misgivings about Hua Biluo, Guoran would have already taken out his battle armor and killed this idiot. Only Long Chen's expression remained indifferent. He didn't say anything. Hua Biluo's expression was a bit unsightly as she icily said, "Li Changhao, we no longer welcome you. You can leave." Li Changhao sneered, "I don't need you to say that. I'm leaving. I really wouldn't have thought that the goddess of our hearts would end up liking a perverted traitor. It really makes a person's heart cold. Brothers, have you not seen this? Sister Biluo has already fallen for this Long Chen. Although he doesn't have any other skills, it seems his seducing skills are really unrivaled beneath the heavens. What are you all waiting for?" Suddenly, a large hand slapped across Li Changhao's face. This slap had come completely silently, and he was struck so hard, his jaw shattered, and his teeth flew out. The indifferent Long Chen had finally taken action. After that slap, he didn't wait for Li Changhao to react. His hand was already tightly clenched around his neck. "Long Chen, what are you doing?" Li Changhao had never imagined that Long Chen would attack him, and that his power would be even more terrifying than before. He didn't have the slightest ability to resist. His eyes were filled with terror. Previously, he had heard that Long Chen was supposedly extremely powerful. But he had always assumed that Yin Wushuang had just been purposely raising his reputation. The more powerful Long Chen was said to be, the more glorious it would be for Han Tianyu when he killed him. "Speak. Who sent you here?" Long Chen indifferently looked at him, his voice ice-cold without the slightest emotion. Hua Biluo had been trembling with rage, but now that Long Chen asked this, she immediately realized that something was wrong with this Li Changhao. "What nonsense are you spouting? I just can't bear people like you. Could it be you want to kill me? Ha, if you have the guts, then go ahead and kill me. That'll just prove you are a bloodthirsty, homicidal devil. Kill me and..." Li Changhao suddenly let out a mournful shriek. The veins on his forehead were bulging, and his eyes almost popped out. "Long Chen..." Hua Biluo let out a startled cry. She could tell that Long Chen was using his powerful spiritual strength to crush Li Changhao's soul piece by piece, making him suffer incredible pain. The pain of the soul was the most painful pain. No one would be able to endure it. That was a kind of indescribable pain. "Speak. Who sent you here?" "Long Chen, you're contemptible and shameless. How can you use such cruel dash?" A disciple had just stood out to try and fight for justice when he was killed with a single swat of Long Chen's hand. When I'm speaking, others shouldn't interrupt, or my mood might drop. Long Chen swept his gaze over them. Those people all shivered in terror. I know that quite a few of here are the same as him and were planted in your positions. It'd be best for you not to provoke me, or you'll immediately die. After saying that, Long Chen retracted his gaze. How could it be possible for those people's dirty tricks to be concealed from Long Chen? But this Li Changhao was really too much of an idiot. He wanted to stand out? Then it seemed Long Chen was forced to single him out. Li Changhao's soul had already been crushed by Long Chen. Right now, he was essentially a walking corpse, completely reliant on Long Chen's spiritual strength. Once he withdrew that spiritual strength, Li Changhao would immediately become an imbecile. Speak. Who sent you here? Long Chen was still repeated the same question. At this time, Li Changhao's eyes had lost their focus. Under Long Chen's spiritual pressure, he was unable to refuse to answer. It was Dash. Long Chen's expression suddenly changed, and he hastily threw Li Changhao to the side. Chapter 435. Li Changhao's body flew out a few dozen meters before his head suddenly exploded. Red liquid splashed. Long Chen, you contemptible traitor, how dare you use spiritual witchcraft to force someone to lie and set up people? You really are inferior even to beasts. A voice filled with disdain suddenly rang out. People hastily looked in that direction, seeing a man standing atop a huge black leopard. Feng Xiaozi. Long Chen's pupils shrunk slightly. While he had been forcing Li Changhao to tell the truth with his spiritual strength, he had suddenly sensed that Li Changhao's soul had been ignited and he had hastily thrown him out. Perhaps the only person who would have been able to do that was a skillful soul cultivator like Feng Xiaozi. Behind Feng Xiaozi were dozens of people, each of them riding a huge magical beast and looking icily at Long Chen and the others. Senior apprentice brother Feng, what are you doing? Meng Qi walked over to Long Chen's side, furiously saying, Long Chen was forcing that person to tell the truth. Why would you try and frame a good man? Frame a good man? What kind of good man does Long Chen count as? Furthermore, I hereby use my status as Junior Pavilion Master to order you and Lu Feng'er to return to us and cut off ties with this traitor, ordered Feng Xiaozi. Senior apprentice sister Meng Qi, just come back. We're a family, a young lady behind Feng Xiaozi implored. Meng Qi sighed, Junior apprentice sister, there are many things you don't understand. I have my own troubles. She then turned to Feng Xiaozi. I won't return. I will be fighting shoulder to shoulder with Long Chen, and once the secret realm closes, I will be leaving the Wind Spirit Pavilion. How audacious! To dare take advantage of your master and sect, you really are disgraceful. Our Wind Spirit Pavilion raised you, and now you dare betray us? Roared Feng Xiaozi. Raised me? Didn't you have your own goals? For that goal, didn't you use the lives of my fiancé and my entire family to threaten me? This is your favor? At this moment, tears involuntarily poured from Meng Qi's eyes. Feng Xiaozi saw that those Wind Spirit Pavilion disciples behind him had confused expressions, and he angrily shouted, What absolute nonsense! You traitor, you're trying to smear your sect's name. Feng Xiaozi, from now on, I am no longer a member of the Wind Spirit Pavilion. The debt between myself and the Wind Spirit Pavilion is now settled. Neither of us owes the other anything. Then turning to those other Wind Spirit Pavilion disciples, Meng Qi said, Everyone, we've known each other for many years. I trust that you all know what kind of person I am. I hope you can empathize with me. After all, we still have our emotions from being members of the same sect, and I don't want to face you on the battlefield. Tears poured down Meng Qi's face. After all, these friends she had been with for so many years had now all of a sudden become strangers. That kind of feeling was something outsiders were unable to comprehend. Sister Meng Qi, don't feel bad. You still have Long Chen and you still have us. Lu Feng'er held Meng Qi's hand. Good. Then let me just see what kind of ending a traitor like you will have. Sneered Feng Xiaozi. Stop calling her a traitor. Neither you nor your father are good people. He only accepted Meng Qi to be used as a daughter-in-law for breeding. For that goal, just how many despicable things have you done? Just the fact that you have the face to call yourselves the Pavilion Master and Junior Pavilion Master is already enough to make me sick. Lu Feng finally couldn't hold back and began to curse wildly while pointing at Feng Xiaozi's nose. No one understood Meng Qi's suffering and helplessness better than Lu Feng. Now she was completely infuriated with Feng Xiaozi. "Shut up, slut," roared Feng Xiaozi. Suddenly, a blood-colored saber image cut across the air, bringing with it endless killing intent, looking like some heavenly blade, one that could cut apart the river of stars. This saber's power shook all of heaven and earth. All the murderous aura within the world had been sucked into the saber, and it was filled with an annihilative power. No one had expected that the always calm Long Chen would now attack. And as soon as he attacked, he launched such a killing blow. All of heaven and earth changed color from this saber. The person closest to Long Chen, Hua Biluo, felt as if she had fallen into an ice house. As for Feng Xiaozi, he was filled with horror. He realized he couldn't even move as he had been locked down by some power. The saber image slashed down. Blood flew. Feng Xiaozi's black leopard had been cut in two, and its blood dyed the ground red. That was a peak 4th rank magical beast. But it hadn't even had a chance to cry out before it had been killed by Long Chen's saber. This saber could rend the heavens, and it shocked everyone. Even Shui Wei's pupils shrunk. That attack had just been too terrifying. Everyone was dumbfounded. Feng Xiaozi was a soul cultivator, and in terms of combat ability, he was on the same level as peak experts. "Where's Feng Xiaozi? I don't see his corpse." It seems he used a teleportation talisman at the last moment. But it happened too fast, and I didn't see clearly. Those people with lower cultivation bases weren't even able to tell what had happened. All of them looked at Long Chen with amazement and reverence. As a soul cultivator, Feng Xiaozi possessed profound spiritual attacks that were almost unblockable. He was someone who could almost stand shoulder to shoulder with people like Shui Wei, but in front of Long Chen's attack, the only thing he could do was activate a teleportation talisman to flee for his life. If it hadn't been for that teleportation talisman, perhaps he would have already become a corpse. Thinking of that result, people felt numb. Long Chen really was a monster. How regretful. "That idiot is always so displeasing, but he actually managed to run," said Guoran. As for those people by Hua Biluo's side, their foreheads became covered with sweat. Those people who had faced Long Chen arrogantly were filled with regret. Now that Feng Xiaozi had fled, the remaining Wind Spirit Pavilion disciples were all dumbfounded, not knowing what they should do. "You should go to the side of the righteous path and prepare yourselves for the upcoming battle," said Meng Qi when she saw that none of them decided to stand out. "Yes, Senior Apprentice Sister Meng Qi." All those Wind Spirit Pavilion disciples bowed to her. Meng Qi bitterly simuled. "From today onwards, I am no longer a disciple from the Wind Spirit Pavilion. I am not your Senior Apprentice Sister." "Senior Apprentice Sister Meng Qi, no matter where you go in the future, you will always be our respected Senior Apprentice Sister Meng Qi." That young lady who had begged Meng Qi before now spoke resolutely. Meng Qi's heart was moved, but unfortunately, the Wind Spirit Pavilion was no longer her home. In the future, they might never see each other again. The Wind Spirit Pavilion disciples went to the Righteous Path's side. They needed to wait for Feng Xiaozi to return, but they had no idea just where he had been teleported to. If he didn't return in time for the exit, then he really would be doomed. Once the Wind Spirit Pavilion disciples were settled, Hua Biluo looked over her people. "We are now friends with Long Chen. I've decided to work my way through trials and tribulations with him. But I won't force all of you. You can choose for yourselves to stay or leave." All of them were now given a hard decision. They hadn't expected to have to make this kind of decision. If they left, they could give up on getting any favors from Hua Biluo. But if they stayed, that was equivalent to becoming enemies with the first monastery and the Yin family. If this was merely a struggle between the first monastery and the second monastery, they wouldn't feel any fear. After all, if it was just two monasteries, then when they fought, they would always leave some leeway. But if they joined Long Chen, then that would change. Long Chen had killed Han Tianyu's brother, and also severed Yin Wushuang's arm. They all knew that he would definitely try and kill Yin Wushuang. Then this matter would become much more complicated. Previously, Hua Biluo hadn't told them of her decision to join Long Chen. They had to make their own decision at this time. This would only benefit her. Those who dared to stay at this time were definitely comparatively more devoted, so this was a kind of trial for them. Previously, Long Chen had told her that her group would definitely have some undercover agents. Although Long Chen had been interrupted by Feng Xiaozi when he had been about to get the truth, anyone smart would know that the only ones who would send people to infiltrate her group had to be a top expert of the righteous path, and they had to be opponents with Hua Biluo and Long Chen. So the two names didn't need to be said. Long Chen had only done it to give Hua Biluo some proof and to make her careful not to be stabbed in the back by someone. Although Hua Biluo was very intelligent, when it came to being contemptible and shameless, when it came to using any means necessary, she was far from lacking compared to Yin Wushuang. Now that Hua Biluo asked them for their decision, over half of her people immediately left. As for those that were hesitating, many of them also chose to leave in the end. People all cared about profit. When the profit outweighed the danger, people would all like to join you even if you didn't need them. But when the danger outweighed the profit, no one would choose to help you when you were down. Hua Biluo wasn't surprised by this many people leaving. Her expression was calm. At this time, less than 1,000 people remained. But a large portion of those people were still in the midst of deciding. In just a moment, less than 500 people remained. At this time, Hua Biluo was no longer able to control her expression. She really hadn't expected for this many people to leave. Not even the reward she had promised them had managed to move them. This kind of situation is very normal. When waves wash sand, they'll bring away the sand, leaving behind only the gold. Long Chen comforted her when he saw her disappointment. But the gold remaining really is too weak. Hua Biluo bitterly smiled. She realized that of the people remaining, the majority were just favored. Most of the chosen had left. Whether gold can shine depends on where you place it. Most importantly, it will always be yours and won't betray you. That's the most important part, said Long Chen. In the end, there were only just over 400 people remaining by Hua Biluo's side. Long Chen said, the first people who left were all infiltrators, and they took the lead to leave to bring others away as well. As for the last people to leave, they were also infiltrators, and they left because they realized there was no longer any value to being a spy here. So right now you should be happy, as these are your most faithful allies. You're right. At the very least I don't need to doubt them. Although they aren't strong enough, that's fine. As long as they can survive, I will give them a future, smiled Hua Biluo. When disciples from noble families like her went out for tempering experiences, they would always bring around a group of followers. Otherwise, there would be no way to fight with other disciples from powerful families for resources. Hua Biluo had realized many things she had never thought of before from Long Chen. She saw that the people beside Long Chen were now completely transformed from when they had first entered the secret realm. That made her think of what he had just said, whether gold can shine depends on where you place it. Seeing what levels they had reached told her that talented people were all nurtured to that point. Long Chen, come with me. I have a few things I have to say to you alone, said Hua Biluo. Chapter 436. Long Chen, you've seen the video I sent you, right? Hua Biluo pulled Long Chen a certain distance away from the others. It wasn't that she didn't trust the people by his side, but that she was worried about her own people. Yes, I saw it. I want to hear your thoughts. Long Chen pondered for a moment before saying, from the current power the two of you have displayed, Han Tianyu is a slight level higher than you. However, if I haven't misjudged, you're someone who focuses on defense and should be suited to battles of attrition. Attacking isn't your strength. So no one would be able to predict the exact odds of who would win if the two of you fought. In their last fight, Hua Biluo had intentionally just been trying to probe Han Tianyu's abilities, while Han Tianyu had also seen through her thoughts, and so neither of them had used their true skills. However, Long Chen had still managed to see that she specialized in defense, causing her to feel some amazement. Long Chen's sudden rise was not the slightest bit coincidental. Just this sharp vision was admirable. Brother Long is correct. My Hua family's core technique relies on defense and to gain victory through a drawn-out battle. However, Han Tianyu is also crafty and managed to see through my intentions. He only let out random blows, not revealing the slightest bit of his true abilities, sighed Hua Biluo. If Guoran and the others were to hear this, they would definitely be scared to death. That kind of terrifying fight had just been probing blows. What are your thoughts on Han Tianyu? Asked Hua Biluo. Profound and unfathomable. Long Chen's expression became slightly grave. He attacks without any sign so you can't predict his actions. And did you notice? Each time you exchanged blows, he was only looking into your eyes. He was able to easily predict every single one of your moves. Hua Biluo nodded. That's right. Each time I tried to attack, he seemed to know exactly what kind of move I was making and was long since waiting for me. That was extremely discouraging. Could it be he really knows a mind-reading skill? Thinking of that, Hua Biluo's expression became a bit unnatural. In their previous fight, her confidence had been shaken, as Han Tianyu was just too strong. The most terrifying thing about him was his accurate predictions. It was as if he could see through all her abilities. Mind-reading skill? Long Chen smiled. He thought of a certain beautiful face with its soul-stealing eyes that could bring about the fall of a nation. At that time, he had also said such words. Mind-reading was a kind of legendary divine art. To be able to read your opponent's every thought while fighting, it was unstoppable and was one of the most terrifying kinds of abilities. It was precisely because it was terrifying that there was no one who would want to be enemies with such a person. If whatever they wanted to do was known by their enemy, would they even have a chance at surviving? First, let's not discuss whether there really are people in this world who have mind-reading skills. I can guarantee that Han Tianyu does not have that ability, smiled Long Chen. What? That's impossible. Through some secret channels, I heard that Han Tianyu truly did spend a great deal of time on mind-reading skills. It seems he obtained some armor and managed to comprehend something from it. Furthermore, those who fight with him always have the feeling that all their thoughts are seen through, the exact same feeling as me, said Hua Biluo. For now, I won't doubt your source. But I am sure that he definitely doesn't know how to read minds. Did you notice something? Hua Biluo was taken back by how sure Long Chen seemed. It's just my guess. My guess is based on two things. First, when Mo Nian fought against him, he didn't have that kind of feeling. Mo Nian is my good brother, and when he told me about his fight against Han Tianyu, he didn't feel anything strange like that. Oh, Mo Nian was also a peak expert, and so she naturally knew who he was. Furthermore, it was no secret that Mo Nian had exchanged blows with Han Tianyu. However, she was surprised that Mo Nian hadn't sensed anything strange. Could it be that Han Tianyu was intentionally not displaying that skill? Questioned Hua Biluo. If he dared do something like that, I guarantee Mo Nian would have shot him through. You should know that Mo Nian's archery skills are unrivaled, and no one would dare hold back like that against him, said Long Chen confidently. Although he hadn't interacted with Mo Nian for long, Mo Nian's archery skills were practically supernatural. Even Long Chen felt admiration for them. That was my first clue. The second one is that when he fought with you, he was constantly looking into your eyes. At first I found that a bit odd, but then I realized, this idiot is starry-eyed for you, laughed Long Chen. Hua Biluo blushed and rebuked, don't make jokes. Long Chen put away his smile and returned to the topic. In truth, at our level, we don't fight with our eyes. Our eyes are just supplementary tools that we can't trust too easily, as eyes are too easily deceived. When experts fight, we always trust our spiritual perception and reactions more. Since sight is not so important, why would Han Tianyu look at you like that? It's because, as long as he does that, Many people, including you, end up deceived by him. Deceived? Yes. Those so-called mind-reading skills are just little tricks. When people blindly bet, there will always be winners and losers. But once someone bets right, their opponent becomes afraid, said Long Chen. But that's not right. I've already investigated, and everyone who ends up fighting with him has this feeling of having all their moves predicted. That's not just a one-time gamble. Good point. Then let me ask you a question. Why is that those people you investigated had that feeling, but Emo Nian did not? That is what made me doubt it. Why was it that Han Tianyu's mind-reading skill failed when facing Emo Nian? Let me make a brazen guess. Han Tianyu is simply proficient in almost every kind of martial weapon, and based on the faintest of clues, such as the eyes, shoulders, waist, elbows, and other things, he is able to guess what an opponent will do. However, Emo Nian is not a close-range fighter. He has all kinds of ways to use his bow and arrow. He can use the bow itself as a weapon at close range and can shoot out arrows at long range. Due to that, others cannot predict what he is going to do, said Long Chen. Then you mean, Hua Biluo came to a sudden comprehension. There is a 90% chance that Han Tianyu is simply a master at using the various martial weapons. The only thing he is unfamiliar with is the bow and arrow, as amongst cultivators, there are exceptionally few who use the bow, said Long Chen. Hua Biluo was silent for a long time. Although she found this hard to believe, Long Chen's analysis was completely accurate. If what you're saying is true, then Han Tianyu really is frightening. Just how much fighting experience does he have to be able to do that? Exclaimed Hua Biluo. The reason experts are able to become experts is because they have the determination to get stronger. If you have that kind of determination, then you can come up with all kinds of moves. There was one thing that you said that is extremely accurate. Han Tianyu really is frightening. He purposely made up this secret of him knowing how to read minds, when in truth, that was just used to conceal his ultimate killing blows, said Long Chen. His ultimate killing blows? What are those? Long Chen shook his head. How could I know that? It's not like I know how to read minds. However, just think about it. He used this kind of trick, managing to deceive even you. There must be many people who have been deceived like this. Why would Han Tianyu waste so much time to set up the illusion of him knowing how to read minds? Isn't the only possibility that he doesn't want to reveal his true strength? Just this one fake mind-reading skill is able to cause countless people to retreat from him. He can subdue all those people without even fighting them. That's the most superior battle tactic. As for his strongest techniques, other than himself, there is only one kind of people who know that. What kind of people? Dead people. Although it was just 2 words, they caused a chill in Hua Biluo's heart. Those 2 words contained many things. If Long Chen's guess really was correct, then Han Tianyu's thinking was terrifying. He was actually able to use such a trick to deceive so many people. Even she had believed that Han Tianyu possessed something along the lines of a mind-reading skill. That itself had been a blow to her. If you fought with that kind of mentality, then your combat strength would drop by at least 30%. What chance would you have of defeating a monster like Han Tianyu? This also meant that at this point, there was no one who knew Han Tianyu's trump cards. The only ones who did were the ones Long Chen had just pointed out, dead people. Thinking of that, Hua Biluo's scalp turned numb at the thought of Han Tianyu's profound scheming. At the same time, she practically prostrated herself in admiration towards Long Chen for his ability to see through it. Han Tianyu had hidden his scheming so profoundly, but from just a single video, Long Chen was able to see through Han Tianyu's intentions. When compared to Han Tianyu and Long Chen, her and Yin Wushuang's petty little tricks were truly just laughably childlike. Let's go back. It seems experts have appeared on both sides. Long Chen and Hua Biluo returned to their camps. Quite a few faces had appeared amongst the righteous and corrupt paths. On the side of the corrupt path, there were 4 new people standing beside Shueya. That made Long Chen feel a chill. Obviously, they should be people on the same level as Shueya. Even if they were a bit weaker, it wouldn't be by that much. As for the righteous side, quite a few experts had also appeared. Their auras surged, causing space to uneasily twist around them. In particular, there was a certain mustached man that drew Long Chen's attention. This person was over 6 feet tall and had a tough and stocky build. On his back was a broadsword just as tall as he was. When he walked, the ground would tremble with each step. That broadsword on his back had to be shockingly heavy. But the thing that surprised Long Chen the most was that he sensed a familiar aura from this large man. However, he was sure he had never seen him before. This person walked alone, not interacting with anyone else. Furthermore, a baleful aura came from his body that made it seem like he was a murderous god from hell, making it so others wouldn't dare approach him. This person is very terrifying. How is it that no one has heard of him before? It's a good thing he's a righteous disciple. Hua Biluo was also filled with shock when she looked at him. Long Chen was just about to reply when suddenly, cheers erupted amongst the corrupt side. Long Chen quickly turned over to look, a strange expression appearing on his face. He's finally come. Chapter 437. The corrupt path let out a burst of cheers as a lanky man appeared in Long Chen's eyes. This man was wearing violet gold robes with a jade belt around his waist. His face looked as if it had been carved with a knife, and his eyes emitted a cold light that would make people tremble. He looked as if he was a devil god who had descended to the earth, looking disdainfully down on all. Yin Luo. The righteous disciples' hearts quivered, as Yin Luo's reputation was known to all. Even amongst the geniuses of 7 prefectures, Yin Luo still stood at the peak. Without releasing any aura, he still made it hard for them to breathe. Beside him were 2 other corrupt experts, their auras so powerful that they didn't even lose out to Shuewia. That made the righteous disciples' morale plummet. At this point, the righteous disciples had an absolute advantage in numbers compared to the corrupt disciples. But in terms of peak combat strength, the 2 were separated by a great deal. The righteous side clearly had fewer top experts. That made them feel a chill. If they fought like this, the majority of them would just be pigs for the slaughter. That wouldn't be a battle, but a one-sided massacre. The top experts stood at the peak of the food chain. They would always be the ones to benefit, while the ones to suffer calamity were the ones on the bottom of the food chain. This battle would quickly wash out all the weaklings. The corrupt side clearly had more top experts, and so the ordinary core disciples and even the favored were filled with despair. Long Chen was clearly not standing with the righteous disciples. When the battle started, no one was sure whether Long Chen would be fighting with them against the corrupt disciples. Yin Luo's long hair blew in the breeze, his face icy and grave. As soon as he arrived, countless corrupt disciples greeted him. He merely nodded slightly towards them. But suddenly his eyes narrowed, and his powerful aura exploded out. Terrifying killing intent soared towards the sky, all because he saw a certain person. Long Chen. Yin Luo, long time no see. Seeing you safe and sound really is gratifying, smiled Long Chen. However, inside, his heart thudded. He could felt an immense sense of danger from Yin Luo. Considering how powerful he was, there were few who could threaten him now. But that sensation of danger was extremely intense from Yin Luo. It seemed that it wasn't just him who had been lucky. Yin Luo had definitely obtained some kind of opportunity in the secret realm that had made him much stronger. Die! Yin Luo suddenly shot forward, the ground trembling beneath him. He had already appeared in front of Long Chen like some phantom. A 300-meter illusion appeared behind him, looking like a projection of a devil god. That projection immediately caused the heavens to shake. Heavens, Yin Luo's gone out of control. He wants to instantly kill Long Chen. No one had expected that Yin Luo would directly attack Long Chen without saying a word. Would this be the opening curtains of the righteous and corrupt battle? But then thinking about it, Long Chen was already standing alone, and there was a clear distinction between him and the other righteous disciples, so this wouldn't necessarily spark the fight. Guoran and the others all stood up, all of them ready to fight. Even Wild was woken. Looking at Yin Luo, Long Chen didn't seem to be doing anything. However, his Fengfu star and Alioth star were already beginning to circulate, ready to explode with power at any moment. But suddenly, a bright ray of light shot through the air at Yin Luo. With a snort, an ancient bronze-colored spear appeared in Yin Luo's hands. This spear was already corroded, and yet the pressure it released made it seem as terrifying as a bloodthirsty monster. Boom! Yin Luo's spear smashed into that ray of light. The ground shook as Yin Luo was knocked back by that light, his expression changing slightly. 10 years I wandered with my bow, my arrows causing heaven and earth to shake. The 9 heavens, 10 lands, and all the universe will revolve around me. Only I, Emon Yen, will rise to glory. Following a grand chant that rang out in everyone's ears, a figure appeared from the distance. An ancient, multicolored bow was held in his hand, and he wore a cloak that made it so others weren't able to see his face. Emon Yen. Everyone could guess who he was. That ray of light had been an arrow, however it wasn't a true arrow, but one condensed from spiritual qi. In this world, perhaps only the experts from Mo Gate were able to condense spiritual qi into arrows like this. Furthermore, to use a single arrow to stop Yin Luo was only possible for Mo Gate's #1 disciple, Emon Yen. Long Chen smiled. This fellow always liked this flashy entrance style. It really made a person speechless. Boss, you have to learn from Emon Yen. This is how an expert should show off. Guorant's eyes were shining as he watched Emon Yen walk over. Behind Emon Yen were over 300 bow-carrying experts. They were all wearing the same clothes as Emon Yen. They were ink black with only 2 crossing golden arrows on the front. That was the symbol of Mo Gate. Although Emon Yen seemed to just be slowly walking, his speed was extremely fast. Each step he took allowed him to traverse a mile. He appeared in front of Long Chen in just a moment. How is it? I arrived on time, right? Emon Yen laughed, throwing off his cloak and revealing his still slightly immature face. Emon Yen, you've also come. Then we can finally settle our grudges. Last time you joined hands with Long Chen to defeat me once. Today I'll let the 2 of you die together beneath my spear. Killing intent surged out of Yin Luo's eyes. Hearing that, many people suddenly realized the rumors of Long Chen chasing after a fleeing Yin Luo must have been because he had worked together with Mon Yen. Stop being so shameless. The first time we fought together, we worked together to cut off one of your legs. But what about the second time? Wasn't your arm still cut off by just Long Chen? Said Mon Yen. Now everyone was confused. Just which one of them was telling the truth? You'll only be alive to say that for a little while longer. Long Chen, today you'll definitely die. Yin Luo's words suddenly changed and he surprisingly returned to his side. Emon Yen and Long Chen were both startled. To just brag without doing anything wasn't Yin Luo's style. They had been entirely ready to begin a fight with him. I understand. At the same time, Long Chen, Emon Yen, and Hua Biluo realized what was going on. The crucial point was Han Tianyu. Yin Luo wasn't an idiot. He knew that Long Chen had killed Han Tianyu's brother, and Han Tianyu would definitely not let him off. Now he was just going to watch while the 2 of them fought. The only reason he had charged forward just now was because his anger had overwhelmed his head. Long Chen had caused him far too great of an injury. In truth, when he had been advancing to bone forging this time, it had been incredibly dangerous. He had almost died because of a heart devil. So if he wanted to continue cultivating, he absolutely could not allow Long Chen to continue living in this world. As soon as he had seen him, his killing intent had erupted. Another reason he had attacked was to test out Long Chen's strength. Although he had advanced to bone forging, he had suffered far too much because of Long Chen, and he didn't dare be careless. If Long Chen's strength was still around the same as before, then he could kill him on his own without waiting for Han Tianyu. After all, personally killing Long Chen would immediately erase his heart devil. But if Long Chen died to someone else, then this heart devil could only be slowly dissipated. Unfortunately, Emon Yen had stopped him before he could determine Long Chen's strength. Now that he had Emon Yen and Hua Biluo by his side, they were three peak experts, and he wasn't so overconfident as to believe he could kill Long Chen 1 against 3. Since he couldn't kill him, he naturally wouldn't bother wasting his energy. It was better to leave this trouble to Han Tianyu while he played the fisherman. After realizing that, Long Chen just smiled and introduced Emon Yen and Hua Biluo. Although Mo Gate was not an ancient family, it was extremely powerful, and even the ancient families were intimidated by them. Their statuses were basically the same. Furthermore, those 300 Mo Gate disciples he had brought were all experts amongst experts. Hua Biluo couldn't help sighing. The 400 people by her side couldn't even compare to the 300 people by Emon Yen's side. Other than a few dozen trusted aides she had brought out from her family, when it came to power, not even 10 of her regular members would be able to defeat one of Emon Yen's. Originally, she had thought that standing by Long Chen's side would be helping him out greatly. She really hadn't expected that once Emon Yen had appeared, her group had become minor extras. Glancing at Hua Biluo, Long Chen seemed to see through what she was thinking and smiled. No matter how you put it, Long Chen will still owe Sister Biluo a favor. Long Chen truly was grateful to her, as she was the first to stand by his side. As for Emon Yen, they were brothers, and so there were no favors to speak of between them. Hearing that, Hua Biluo couldn't help being embarrassed. When comparing to Long Chen's candid openness, she felt she really was petty and narrow-minded. At the same time, she sighed. It was no wonder Long Chen had so many beautiful women by his side. Just how many women could resist the charm of a heroic figure like Long Chen who cared so deeply about emotional ties? Cultivators all respected the strong, and which expert wasn't arrogant about their power? But Long Chen had never put on such airs. He was like a deep well that appeared ordinary on the surface. Only once you got closer to him would you realize he was incredibly profound. He was a kind of mysterious man, and that kind of mysteriousness possessed a fatal charm to women. He could also be compared to a mountain. He might seem like nothing special normally, but once he erupted, he could destroy the heavens and tear apart the earth. For example, Long Chen's attack on Feng Shaozi just now had truly just been like a volcano erupting. She still hadn't recovered from her shock from that attack. In order to protect the women by his side, Long Chen might become a furious lion at any moment, or perhaps a raging volcano. In fact, perhaps he would not hesitate to destroy this entire world. Even Hua Biluo couldn't help being emotionally affected. No matter how powerful a woman was, who wouldn't want a shoulder to lean on, one that would never betray them? Unfortunately, such shoulders were pitifully few. At this time, Long Chen and Emon Yen were chatting. She didn't know what exactly the two of them were saying, but the two of them seemed in high spirits. They were smiling mischievously, and she managed to hear that they were talking about Yin Luo. Rumble. The ground began to shake intensely, and people hastily looked into the distance. The righteous disciples let out a burst of cheers. Han Tianyu has arrived. Chapter 438. Han Tianyu has arrived. The righteous disciples let out an incredibly loud cheer. There was a multicolored tiger in the distance that was rapidly approaching. It was unknown what kind of tiger this was. It was around 100 meters long, and the end of its tail had a hook on it, similar to a scorpion's tail. That hook shined sinisterly, making people feel an icy chill in their bones. Han Tianyu was standing on the tiger's head. Two shining eyes lit up his handsome face. His embroidered robes fluttered in the wind, and with the way his long hair blew back in the breeze, he was indescribably handsome. Tish, the pretty boy has come. Emon Yen spat on the ground. When it came to looks, Han Tianyu definitely stood at the peak. As soon as he appeared, it was unknown just how many maidens from the righteous path began to scream fanatically. Han Tianyu had immediately suppressed Emon Yen's flashy entrance. Emon Yen did not have Han Tianyu's influence, and especially toward women, his still slightly immature face truly brought him down. Once Han Tianyu almost reached everyone, the tiger suddenly paused, and Han Tianyu was immediately thrown off, causing quite a few people to cry out. But then they realized that Han Tianyu was calmly floating through the air like a divine immortal descending upon the world. This action immediately caused countless cheers. The women were already starry-eyed. "Boss, do you see? This is what it means to be a poser, to show off. I've long since been telling you that you can't look down on the effect of posturing. Look, those women have practically gone insane. When it comes to looks, you wouldn't be that much inferior to Han Tianyu. As long as you listen to me, I guarantee you'll be able to make an entrance 10 times flashier than this one." Guo Ran patted himself on the chest confidently. Long Chen was speechless, too lazy to respond. However, Mo Nian's eyes began to shine. "This brother, you should be called Guo Ran, right? Brother Guo Ran, as soon as I saw you, I knew we're an erudite and talented man. In the future, us two brothers should talk more." Mo Nian wrapped his arm around Guo Ran's shoulders. This intimate action made Guo Ran feel as if he were floating through the clouds. Mo Nian was the junior pavilion master of Mo Gate, a peak expert. What kind of glory was this? "Big brother Mo, you're too courteous, to think you would think so highly of me. No matter what you tell me to do, even if you want me to tread through fire and water, I definitely won't even frown," said Guo Ran. "Brother Guo really is a loyal man, a true hero." Mo Nian gave him a thumbs up. "I hear that Brother Guo has great skill when it comes to showing off. In fact, just from your words I can tell you are a great master. I wonder if you have some time to teach your brother." Long Chen finally couldn't endure it and quietly roared, "Can you two shut up? Now isn't the time for nonsense." Guo Ran and Mo Nian immediately stopped speaking. But their eyes still seemed to communicating, and it was obvious they felt great sorrow that they hadn't met each other earlier. Other than that large, mustached man, everyone else had gotten up for Han Tianyu's arrival. Han Tianyu's prestige amongst the righteous disciples had reached a level that no one else could reach. Seeing those people's passion, sadness flitted within Hua Biluo's eyes. It seemed she really was too lacking when compared to Han Tianyu. When she thought of how she had been planning on struggling with him, she realized how laughable she was. Of her thousands of original followers, only 400 remained. As for Han Tianyu, as soon as he arrived, he caused such a huge flare of passion. When comparing the two, she almost had an urge to find a hole and bury herself. Quite a few of the other top experts went to go greet Han Tianyu, and Han Tianyu courteously greeted them back, making him seem very amiable. Only now did those people behind Han Tianyu approach. The person at the front was a certain woman that made Long Chen's killing intent ignite. At this time, Yin Wushuang looked the same as ever. Her severed arm had already been regrown, but it seemed her psychological state wasn't very good, as her eyes were very red, as if she hadn't closed them in a long time. There were 4 people behind Yin Wushuang whose auras were not the slightest bit weaker than hers. They were all experts amongst experts. The first person Yin Wushuang noticed was the distant Long Chen. The instant she saw him, she shivered, terror filling her. However, she suppressed it. She sneered, and reaching out a hand, she made a throat-cutting gesture at Long Chen, one filled with provocation. She really must want to die. Yu Zifeng, who rarely ever spoke, was now tightly clenching his sword, his fury soaring. He had a powerful urge to immediately charge over and cut off her head. When he saw Yin Wushuang, the first thing he thought of was Guan Wennen, who had died so miserably. As one of the 4 core disciples who had awakened their ancestral marks upon joining, he had once shown quite a bit of care for Yu Zifeng. Now when Yu Zifeng looked at Yin Wushuang's provocation, he almost lost control. "Don't be impatient. She will definitely die," said Long Chen lightly. "In truth, she is only provoking you to hide her heart's terror," said Hua Biluo. She was extremely familiar with Yin Wushuang. Previously she had felt completely defeated by Han Tianyu, but now she found some comfort from Yin Wushuang. Her true opponent was only Yin Wushuang. Han Tianyu was just secondary. In fact, if she wanted to sacrifice herself, she could pull Han Tianyu into her Hua family at any time, and Yin Wushuang would have nothing. However, Hua Biluo might be a schemer, but she still had her own bottom line. She didn't want to sacrifice the rest of her life to pull over Han Tianyu. Nowadays, Yin Wushuang had Han Tianyu, but she wasn't lacking at all. At least Long Chen had become her reliable ally. After greeting those people, Han Tianyu waved his hand and those righteous disciples immediately shut their mouths. The entire crowd became silent. Han Tianyu smiled with satisfaction at that. He frowned slightly when he saw that man who was still sitting there with his eyes closed, but he didn't say anything. He turned towards the corrupt side and loudly said, "Yin Luo, can our righteous and corrupt battle wait for a moment so I can handle a selfish matter?" With Han Tianyu's prestige, he could represent all the experts of the righteous path. Yin Luo's position was the same as his, and he could also represent his corrupt path. The two of them were both very regretful that despite representing the peak combatants of their sides, they hadn't had a chance to truly fight. "That's fine. We aren't lacking that bit of time," Yin Luo replied icily. Although Han Tianyu had arrived, his expression was still completely calm. He had his own trump cards, and he was confident he could defeat him. "Then thank you." Han Tianyu smiled and turned to Long Chen. However, just as he was about to speak, a group of people suddenly appeared, interrupting him. This group of people had over 500 people. They were rushing right over to Long Chen's side, ignoring the righteous and corrupt sides. These people all had powerful auras. Each of them was a favored, and their white robes had a red cloud stitched into them. Huayan sect. Han Tianyu frowned slightly. Long Chen was also startled. He didn't recognize these people, but then seeing their robes, he thought of a certain person. "Long Chen, it's been a while." A lively Bai Ling appeared in front of him, smiling. So it was Sister Bai Ling. It really had been a long time. "This is?" Long Chen didn't understand what was going on. "Let me introduce you. This is Senior Apprentice Brother Zheng Wenlong." Bai Ling pulled over a tall man. This man had a square face and looked like the disciple of a rich family. Long Chen could sense quite a bit of pressure from him. Surprisingly, this person was also a peak expert. "I've long since wanted to meet. Your grand reputation precedes you." Zheng Wenlong extended a hand to Long Chen. "Brother Zheng is too courteous." Long Chen shook hands with him. "Perhaps Brother Long is curious about our intentions. Us Huayan disciples all believe in the wealth god, and we all consider ourselves as business people. And when discussing business, it is better to be direct. For saving Junior Apprentice Sister Bai Ling back then, I will represent all the Huayan sect's disciples to express thanks towards Brother Long." Zheng Wenlong bowed deeply to Long Chen. Long Chen hastily reciprocated the courtesy, saying, "Brother Zheng really is too courteous. I am old friends with Bai Ling, and I naturally had to lend a hand." But at this time, Long Chen could see through some clues. Bai Ling was still standing by Zheng Wenlong's side. From their eyes, it seemed the two of them did not have an ordinary relationship. "Since Brother Long is a straightforward person, I will tell you the truth. If it was just for saving Bai Ling, then I, Zheng Wenlong, would owe you a favor. This favor might be large, but it wouldn't have been enough to bring all the Huayun disciples to risk the danger of standing by your side," said Zheng Wenlong. That was also what Long Chen was curious about. As a peak expert, and someone who came from the Huayan sect, he should naturally be an intellect. Why would he do something so dangerous? Zheng Wenlong continued, "Let me say it again. I am a businessman, and business is about how to make the greatest profit. So I want to make a business transaction with Brother Long." "Business transaction?" "Yes, precisely a business transaction. Today, I brought all my brothers to stand by your side as your allies. When Brother Long leaves afterwards, I hope you will first think of my Huayun sect when you have any profitable business to discuss," said Zheng Wenlong. Long Chen was dumbfounded. "Anything else?" "No. It seems this business transaction would make you lose out a great deal, right? Actually, it seems incredibly likely that you'll take a loss," laughed Long Chen. "When conducting business, how can you make a profit without risk? High risk means high reward. This is my bet." I bet that Brother Long is a dragon amongst men, one who will bring my Huayan sect a large return in the future. Businessmen must trust their vision above all else. If you couldn't even trust yourself and must hesitate over any matter, terrified of every possible outcome, how would you ever accomplish anything big? Zheng Wenlong straightforwardly laughed. But it seems this business of yours will make all your brothers take the risk with you. That's not good, said Long Chen. Brother Long is looking down on us businessmen. We're all life and death brothers, and if I benefit, then they will naturally get a portion in the future as well. Our profits are forever tied together. Getting back to the main point, many people don't understand our Huayan sect and don't understand the ties between us disciples. We also can't be bothered to explain it to them. To sum up, to complete this business between I, Zheng Wenlong, and you, Long Chen, only requires your agreement. What do you think? For even a businessman to be so grand, Long Chen laughed and extended a hand. Zheng Wenlong also extended a hand and was just about to pat Long Chen's when a disdainful shout rang out. To ally with a group of peddlers, Long Chen, you really must be at the end of your rope. That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.